We are going to start with November 2025 magazine, and for this I want you to stay here with me up to security or up to economy, whatever the time tells us. ठीक है, उसके बाद हम पहले पार्ट में तो यहाँ तक करेंगे, दूसरे पार्ट में एनवायरनमेंट या सिक्योरिटी से स्टार्ट करके पूरी मैगजीन कंप्लीट करेंगे, प्लेसेस एंड न्यूज़ तक जाएंगे. दो पार्ट में इसको कंप्लीट करेंगे. दैट विल बी मोर प्रैक्टिकल. ठीक है, लेट्स डू इट without doing any delay. And टेबल ऑफ कंटेंट्स पढ़ना है और AI रीड करेगा अपने लिए. ठीक है, इट विल बिकम ईजियर.
Tense. 1. Polity and governance. 4.1.1 Land registration system in India. 4.1.2 Digital personal data protection. DPDP.
DPDP
Rules
है.
2025. 6.1.3 India AI governance guidelines. 8.1.4 Tribunals. 10.1.5 Legal aid in India. 12.1.6 News in shorts. 14.1.6.1 Supreme Court on assent to bills. 14.1.6.2 Artificial intelligence and the judiciary. 14.1.6.3 Prisons in India 2025 report. 15.1.6.4 Model Youth Gram Sabha MYGS. 16.2 International relations. 17.2.1 Rising global nuclear risk and India's approach to disarmament. 17.2.2 G2. 18.2.3 G20 Summit 2025. 19.2.4 India-US defense ties. 21.2.5 India-Bhutan relations. 23.2.6 UN 80 Initiative Action Plan. 25.2.7 News in shorts. 26.2.7.1 East Asia Summit EAS. 26.2.7.2 Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation APEC. 27.2.7.3 Australia Canada India Technology and Innovation ACITY. 27.2.7.4
Sorry.
World Artificial Intelligence Cooperation Organization WICO.
WICO.
27.2.7.5 Abraham Accords. 27.2.7.6 Water Convention. 27.2.7.7 Anegada Passage. 28.3 Economy. 29.3.1 Export Promotion Mission.
आप इसको कैसे पढ़ सकते हो?
29.3.2
आप अपनी मैगजीन खोलो
Manufacturing in
और
India.
साथ में इसको लगा के पढ़ाई करो,
31.3.3
तो आपका बेटर कंसंट्रेशन आएगा.
World
ठीक है?
Inequality Report 2026. 32.3.4 Implementation of Labor Codes. 34.3.4.1 The Code on Wages 2019. 36.3.4.2 The Industrial Relations Code 2020. 36.3.4.3 The Code on Social Security 2020. 37.3.4.4 The Occupational Safety, Health, and Working Conditions Code 2020 OSHWCE. 37.3.5 Protection of Plant Varieties and Farmers' Rights PPV and FR Act 2001. 38.3.6 Maritime Sector of India. 43.7 News in shorts. 42.3.7.1 Financial Sector Assessment Program FSAP Report by World Bank. 42.3.7.2
IPO.
Initial Public Offering IPO. 43.3.7.3 Digital to modernize warehousing and boost PDS transparency. 43.3.7.4 National Industrial Classification NIC 2025_43 launched. 4. Security. 45.4.1 White collar terrorism. 45.4.2 News and shorts. 46.4.2.1 Exercise and news. 46.4.2.2 GPS spoofing. 47.4.2.3 Burevestnik missile. 47.5 Environment. 48.5.1 UNFCCC-COP30. 48.5.1.1 Other important outcomes of COP30. 51.5.1.2 India's position at COP30. 52.5.1.3. Climate finance. 53.5.2. Urban air pollution. 55.5.3. India's renewable energy growth. 57.5.4. Seed management. 65.5. Vultures. 62.5.6. News and shorts. 63.5.6.1. India-Botswana Cheetah Translocation Pact. 63.5.6.2. Supreme Court directions for tiger reserves protection. 63.5.6.3. SC recalls judgment striking down ex post facto environmental clearances. 64.5.6.4. Dump Site Remediation Accelerator Program, DRAP, launched. 65.5.6.5. Global Reporting Initiative. 65.5.6.6. Leadership Group for Industry Transition, led IT. 65.5.6.7. UAE Consensus. 66.5.6.8. UNEP's Adaptation Gap Report 2025. 66.5.6.9. Emission Gap Report 2025. 66.5.6.10. State of the Cryosphere Report 2025. 66.5.6.11.
Reports बहुत
Global
important
Cooling Watch 2025 report.
तो ये वही है
67.5.6.12 Climate Change Performance Index CCPY 2026. 67.5.6.13 Climate Risk Index 2026. 68.5.6.14 State of Food and Agriculture SOFA 2025 report. 68.5.6.15 Montreal Protocol. 68.5.6.16 Minamata Convention. 69.5.6.17 Lake Turkana. 69.5.6.18 Volcanic eruptions and news. 76 social issues. 71.6.1 Decolonizing the Indian mind. 71.6.2 Juvenile justice system in India. 73.6.3 Curriculum on AI in schools. 74.6.4 News in shorts. 76.6.4.1 Second World Summit for Social Development _76.6.4.2 Generational ban on tobacco. 76.6.4.3 Reports in news. 77.7 Science and technology. 78.7.1 National One Health Mission. 78.7.2 National Action Plan on Antimicrobial Resistance 2.0. 79.7.3 Bursa-101. 87.4 WHO Tuberculosis TB Report 2025. 81.7.5 GSAT7R. 83.7.6 News in shorts. 84.7.6.1 NEC-CAR19. 84.7.6.2 Developments in quantum technology. 85.7.6.3 Satellite-based internet. 85.7.6.4 Vanadium redox flow battery. 86.7.6.5 Escapade mission. 86.7.6.6 Sentinel-6B. 86.7.6.7 Ricin and ammonium nitrate. 86.7.6.8 Promotion of Research and Innovation in Pharma and MedTech PRIP scheme. 87.8 Culture. 88.8.1 UNESCO Creative City of Gastronomy. 88.8.2 Bhagwan Birsa Munda. 89.8.3 150 Years of Arya Samaj. 98.4 Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. 92.8.5 News and Shorts. 94.8.5.1 Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji. 94.8.5.2 ICC Women's Cricket World Cup. 94.8.5.3 New GI Tags. 95.8.5.4 Indira Gandhi Peace Prize. 95.9 Ethics. 96.9.1 Ethics of Neurotech Revolution. 96.10 Schemes and News. 9910.1 Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana, PMFBY. 99 Copyright by Vision 1AS.
ओके अब ना क्या करते
All
हैं
rights are reserved.
कि इसको
No
थोड़ा सा
part of this
आगे कर
document
देते
may
हैं
be
जो भी
reproduced,
अपना
stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any
ओपन कर सकते हैं. You understand?
reserved. No part of this document.
बेसिकली लैंड रजिस्ट्रेशन डायरेक्टली खोलते हैं, बकवास नहीं चलने देते हैं.
Polity and governance.
राइट. मेरे को एक
1.1
चीज़ बताना, तुम्हें वॉइस कौन सी पसंद आ रही है? ये वाली वॉइस बेटर है या फिर मेरे पास एक वॉइस और है, ये विराज की. राइट.
1.1 Land Registration System. Land Registration System in India. Land Registration System in India. Why in the news? Recently, Supreme Court in Samuel.
Land registration system in India. Why in the
Land Registration System in India. Why in the news? Recently, Supreme Court in Samula v. State of Bihar case has. Land Registration System in India. Why in the news? Recently, Supreme Court in Samula v. State of Bihar case has.
ये करता है ना, ये थोड़ा इंडियन लग रहा है.
Land Registration System.
ठीक है, ये वाला करता है. चलो शुरू हो जाओ.
Land Registration System in India.
फोकस.
Why in the news? With their only mandate being to verify that the paper. Why in the news? Recently, Supreme Court in Samula vs. State of Bihar case has called for a fundamental reform in country's land registration and titling system. More on the news. K. Gopi vs. Sub-Registrar case, 2025. Supreme Court held that Registration Act 1908 does not empower sub-registrars to check title or ownership, and that their role is merely ministerial, with their only mandate being to verify that the paperwork is in order and the parties have signed it voluntarily. The Supreme Court of India struck down Bihar's rule, making mutation proof mandatory for property registration, reaffirming that registration records transactions, not ownership. O. It reiterated that document registration under the Registration Act 1908 only records a transaction, while mutation, updating revenue records, is a separate process that doesn't confer title. The court criticized the bureaucratic loop created by outdated land records in India and suggesting a national push for modern, digital, conclusive titling to establish clear ownership. Land registration system in India. Land is a state subject, and registration of deeds is a concurrent list subject under the Schedule 7 of the Constitution.
Okay.
Issues with the existing land registration system in India. Outdated legal framework. India's property transaction system continues to operate under.
So basically, there are two types. Number one is deeds registration system, number one. And number two is the title registration torrent system. The deed registration system are registered in government record, but a registration does not itself guarantee title. Means कि डीड्स में जो ये गवर्नमेंट के साथ रजिस्टर्ड है रिकॉर्ड में, बट रजिस्ट्रेशन से गारंटी नहीं मिल रही है. ओनरशिप इज प्रूवन बाय ट्रेसिंग चेन ऑफ डीड्स. दिस इज द फर्स्ट वे. द सेकेंड वे इज टाइटल रजिस्ट्रेशन टॉरेंट सिस्टम. रजिस्ट्रेशन इज कंक्लूसिव प्रूफ ऑफ टाइटल, कि रजिस्ट्रेशन करा दिया तो टाइटल वो प्रूफ बन गया उसका. द गवर्नमेंट गारंटीज दैट रजिस्टर एंड ओनरशिप चेंजेस ओनली विद रजिस्ट्रेशन. मतलब यहाँ पे डायरेक्ट रजिस्ट्रेशन से हो रहा है. द ओनर गेट्स सर्टिफिकेट ऑफ टाइटल. जैसे रजिस्ट्रेशन हुआ टाइटल मिल गया और लैंड रिकॉर्ड उसके नाम लिखा गया. और पहले वाले में क्या था? पहले में था कि दे आर रजिस्टर्ड इन गवर्नमेंट रिकॉर्ड बट रजिस्ट्रेशन डज नॉट इटसेल्फ गारंटी. तो यहाँ पे ओनरशिप इज प्रूवन बाय ट्रेसिंग चेन ऑफ डीड्स. अब यहाँ पे डीड्स मतलब क्या कारनामे उसने किए हुए हैं उस टाइप से कुछ है, चेन ऑफ डीड्स. उसके बेसिस पे यहाँ पे कंफर्म टाइटल मिलता है. तो रजिस्ट्रेशन वाला पहले केस में, डीड्स वाले केस में कंफर्म नहीं करता है कि आपको टाइटल मिल गया. लेकिन जो दूसरा केस है उसमें रजिस्ट्रेशन कंफर्म कर देगा कि आपको लैंड टाइटल मिलेगा और सर्टिफिकेट वो दे देते हैं. ठीक है, ये दो टाइप के लैंड रजिस्ट्रेशन सिस्टम होते हैं, एक डीड्स एक नॉन डीड्स.
Colonial framework governed by century-old statutes, i.e. Transfer of Property Act 1882, Indian Stamp Act 1899, and Registration Act 1908. No conclusive title, Registration of sale deed under Registration Act does not guarantee ownership. Instead, it only serves as a public record of transaction, having presumptive evidentiary value and not conclusive proof of title. Litigation burden. Fake and fraudulent property documents, land encroachments, verification delays, system of presumptive title through registration, and fragmented state-level procedures leads to 66% of all civil litigation. Administrative problems. Physical presence of buyer, seller, and 2 witnesses for verification, authentication, and recording at sub-registrar offices makes land registration cumbersome and time-consuming. Oh, moreover, since land is a state subject, procedures differ across states, resulting in fragmentation and lack of uniformity. Incomplete digitization. Programs like Digital India, Land Records, Modernization, DIL, RMP, and National Generic Document Registration System, NGDRS, digitize records but do not correct faulty and unclear titles. Measures taken to improve land record system in India, DYLRMP. It aims to replace the
बहुत
manual
important है ये.
presumptive land title system with a digital conclusive land titling system. Initiatives under DILRMP owe unique land parcel, identification number, ULPIN, or BU Aadhaar, 14-digit alphanumeric unique ID for each land parcel based on geocoordinates to streamline real estate transactions and resolve property disputes. ONGDRS, or e-registration. It empowers citizens through online entry of deed, online payment, online appointment, online admission, document search, and certified copy generation. O-linkage of e-court with land records/registration database. It makes authentic first-hand information available to courts, resulting in speedy disposal of cases and reduction in land disputes. O-transliteration of land records. To overcome language barrier, transliterate records of rights in local language to any 22 languages listed in Schedule 8 of Constitution. Digitalized land record system of different states. Odarani portal/Ubarati portal, Telangana. To modernize land administration by digitizing land records and streamlining transactions. O Kaveri portal, Karnataka. To reform land registration. O Bangla Bhumi platform, West Bengal. To provide easy access to land and property records. Supreme Court's call for systemic reformation. Conclusive titling and technology. Conclusive title. Court has directed the Law Commission of India, LC1, for creating a committee with state participation to examine and integrate property registration regime with conclusive titling. Restructuring old laws.
Supreme Court का
LCI
call.
should prepare a report on restructuring century-old colonial era laws governing property transactions, including Transfer of Property Act, 1882, Registration Act, 1908, and Stamp Act, 1899, to align them with modern technology. Synchronization. Align registration with real-time landholding records. Ensure mutation records, survey and settlement operations are timely and accurate so that the registration reflects actual holding. Regulatory authority. Establish a permanent regulatory body for registration offices to build institutional memory and enable real-time assessment and upgradation of the registration establishment. Blockchain technology-based land titling O. It can create a secure, transparent, tamper-proof land registration system, where each record becomes part of cryptographically linked ledger that cannot be altered without detection, thus enhancing integrity of title records. Blockchain is a decentralized, immutable digital ledger that securely records transactions across a network of computers, nodes. It organizes data into blocks that are cryptographically linked in a chain, making records transparent, tamper-proof, and verifiable without a central authority, like a bank or government. O. It could integrate cadastral maps, survey data, and revenue records into a single, verifiable, and accessible digital framework, thereby reducing fraud, improving traceability, and enhancing public trust in land ownership. Conclusion. A future-ready land governance architecture anchored in conclusive titling, harmonized laws, accurate land records, and emerging technologies like blockchain can significantly reduce disputes, enhance ease of transactions, and restore public trust. Such reforms are essential not only for securing property rights, but also for unlocking land's potential as a driver of economic growth, urban planning, and social justice.
Next.
1.2.
DPDP
Digital
rules.
Personal Data Protection
2023 में आए थे पहली बार ये, है ना?
Rules 2025. Why in the news? Government of India notified the Digital Personal Data Protection (DPDP) rules 2025. About DPDP rules 2025 marks the full operationalization of Digital Personal Data Protection Act 2023.
2023 एक्ट को
DPDP
ऑपरेशनलाइज
Act.
कर दिया इसने.
Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology. Implementation timeline. 18-month phased compliance period for organizations to adjust their systems and adopt responsible data practices.
नीति के अंदर आता है.
Key provisions of the rules. Obligations on data fiduciaries.
और 18 मंथ का
Oh.
फेज प्लान है. ठीक
Issue
है?
standalone consent notices that are clear and simple, provide an itemized description and specific purpose of personal data, and specify means by which the data principal may withdraw consent. The ease of withdrawing consent must be comparable to ease with which it was given. Erase personal data if specified purpose is no longer being served, unless legally required to retain it. Personal data and other logs related to processing need for A to be minimum period of 1 year from the date of is processing, unless mandated by law or notification. Retained. Longer. Retention. O. Issue personal data breach. Notification. Informing all affected individuals without delay, explaining what happened, possible impact and steps taken to address the issue. O. Publish business contact. Information of designated officer/data protection officer on the website or app for queries related to personal data. O. Mandatory response within 90 days for all requests related to access, correction, updating or erasure. O. Special protection of children's data through verifiable consent from a parent or guardian before processing a child's personal data. Exemption of consent allowed for essential purposes like healthcare, education, and real-time safety and protection of child. Rights and protections for citizens. See infographic. Data Protection Board of India, DPBY. Consisting of 4 members with dedicated portal and mobile application, allowing citizens to file and track complaints. O. Appeals against board's decisions to be heard by Telecom Disputes Settlement and Appellate Tribunal. TDSAT. Other provisions. O. Enhance obligations on significant data fiduciaries. SDFS. Including mandatory periodic data protection impact assessments.
डेटा प्रोटेक्शन बोर्ड की बात होती है इसमें, है ना?
Independent audits
4
once every
members
12
होते हैं,
months,
dedicated
stricter
portal,
checks
mobile
while using
application,
new or
appeals against the
sensitive
board
technologies,
decision,
etc.
ये टेलीकॉम डिस्प्यूट सेटलमेंट appellate
O.
tribunal,
Consent
TD
managers
SAT
to be
पे
companies
heard कर सकते हैं.
based
ये
in
important है,
India.
आ सकता है.
O. Special protection for persons with disabilities if they cannot make legal decisions. About DPDP Act 2023.
Now moving forward.
Aim to provide mechanism for the processing of digital personal data in a manner that recognizes both the right of individuals to protect their personal data and the need to process such personal data for lawful purpose. 7 core principles: consent and transparency, purpose limitation, data minimization, accuracy, storage limitation, security safeguards, and accountability. Key definitions. O. Data principle. Person to whom the data relates or data fiduciary, person/company/government entity that processes data, O. Consent manager, entity registered with Data Protection Board of India, DPBY, to enable data principals to give, review, and withdraws consent. Applicability. Processing of digital personal data within India, collected digitally or digitized later. Processing outside India if offering goods/services in India or does not apply to personal use data, publicly available data. Consent requirements. Personal data processed only for lawful purposes, with data principals' consent or consent not required for government benefits, services, medical emergencies, legitimate uses. Data Protection Board of India, DPBY. Monitor compliance and impose
ये
penalties.
important है.
Financial penalties for non-compliance by data fiduciaries. O. Up to
अब आपको ये
250
पता
crore
होना चाहिए.
rupees in case of failure to maintain reasonable security safeguard.
आपको इसमें ये पता होना चाहिए कि डेटा प्रिंसिपल क्या होता है, डेटा फिड्यूशरी क्या होता है ना? सो यहाँ पे आप देखो डेटा प्रिंसिपल दे रखा है, डेटा फिड्यूशरी दे रखा है. डेटा प्रिंसिपल है पर्सन टू होम डेटा रिलेट्स, जिससे डेटा रिलेट करता है वो डेटा प्रिंसिपल. फिड्यूशरी पर्सन, कंपनी, एंटिटी दैट प्रोसेसेस डेटा, है ना? अब ये बेसिकली एंटिटी दैट प्रोसेस डेटा इज कॉल्ड डेटा फिड्यूशरी. फॉर एग्जाम्पल कोई अमेजोन है, वो डेटा प्रोसेस कर रही है आपका, तो वो फिड्यूशरी हो गई, और डेटा प्रिंसिपल आप हो गए क्योंकि आपका डेटा है. The consent manager entity registered with Data Protection Board of India to enable data principals to give, review and withdraw consent. So basically consent manager की यहाँ पे बात हुई है. ये वो एंटिटी है जो डेटा प्रोटेक्शन बोर्ड ऑफ इंडिया के साथ बैठती है और जो प्रिंसिपल जो कि हम हैं, जैसे मान लो हम अमेजोन से इंटरेक्ट कर रहे हैं तो प्रिंसिपल हम हुए है ना. सो डेटा प्रिंसिपल टू गिव, रिव्यू एंड विदड्रॉ कंसेंट. एप्लीकेबिलिटी प्रोसेसेस ऑफ बेसिकली प्रोसेसिंग ऑफ डिजिटल डेटा, पर्सनल डेटा विद इन इंडिया कलेक्टेड डिजिटली और डिजिटलाइज. मतलब ये बोला है कि आप जो प्रोसेस कर रहे हो डेटा को इंडिया के अंदर करो, बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है. डिजिटली कलेक्ट किया है या फिर आपने डिजिटाइज बाद में किया है वो अलग चीज़ है, लेकिन वो इंडिया के अंदर होना चाहिए. सेकेंडली प्रोसेसिंग आउटसाइड इंडिया, ऑफरिंग गुड्स और सर्विस इन इंडिया. ओके. और सेकेंड है कि बाहर कर सकते हो, लेकिन आपको अगर इंडिया में अगर गुड्स एंड सर्विसेज प्रोसेस नहीं कर रहे हो उस डेटा से तो आप बाहर नहीं कर सकते. लेकिन अगर आप प्रोसेस करना चाहते हो बाहर तो आप फॉर एग्जांपल सर्विसेज भी, तो फॉर एग्जांपल अमेजोन देता है, इसलिए अमेजोन के सारे डेटा सेंटर्स बाहर हैं. डज नॉट अप्लाई टू पर्सनल यूज डेटा, पब्लिकली अवेलेबल डेटा. ठीक है, ये समझना था. फाइनेंशियल पेनल्टीज नॉन कंप्लायंस के लिए 250 करोड़ इन केस ऑफ फेलियर टू मेंटेन रीजनेबल सिक्योरिटी सेफगार्ड, 200 करोड़ फॉर नॉट नोटिफाइंग द बोर्ड ऑफ अफेक्टेड इंडिविजुअल्स ऑफ पर्सनल डेटा ब्रीच, एंड 50 करोड़ एनी अदर वायलेशन ऑफ एक्ट्स और रूल्स. कोई और अगर वायलेशन हो गया. रिवाइज सेक्शन 81J ऑफ राइट टू इन्फॉर्मेशन एक्ट by exempting disclosure of information which relates to personal information. Right? Now moving forward.
Or up to 200 crore rupees for not notifying the board or affected individuals of a personal data breach, violations of obligations relating to children, or up to 50 crore rupees for any other violation of the Act or rules. Revises Section 8J of the RTI Act by exempting disclosure of information which relates to personal information, need of digital data protection, protection of individual privacy. Without safeguards, citizens may face surveillance, profiling by arbitrary state or big tech companies using personal data, biometrics, location, health, financial details. Prevention of data, misuse and exploitation. Data can be misused for identity theft, financial fraud, targeted manipulation, ads, elections. For example, 33,000 additional cybercrime cases were reported in 2023 as compared to 2021. National Crime Records Bureau, NCRB, Cybersecurity and National Security. Large datasets are targets for hackers and hostile state actors for cyber espionage. For example, cybersecurity incidents in India rose from 10.29 lakh in 2022 to 22.68 lakh in 2024. Building trust in digital economy. It will allow India's digital economy grow in a secure and globally competitive way. Oh. India's digital economy accounted for 11.74% of GDP in 2022 to 23.
Important.
Safeguarding vulnerable groups. Children, elderly, women are more vulnerable to data breaches, online harassment, and exploitation. Ethical use of emerging technologies ensures non-discrimination, fair algorithms, and human oversight. Criticisms of DPDP Rules 2025 and DPDP Act 2023. Broad exemptions. Government can exempt notified agencies for reasons like security, sovereignty, and public order, without clear oversight mechanisms from data protection's obligations. Missing rights. Act omits the right to data portability and the right to be forgotten. Ambiguity in definitions. For example, significant data fiduciary and thresholds for stricter obligations. Compliance burden and impact on innovation. High compliance costs and operational complexity may stifle business growth and innovation in data-heavy businesses. Other initiatives taken for digital data protection. K.S. Puttaswamy Judgment, 2017.
The right to privacy.
Recognized the right to privacy as a fundamental right under Article 21 and directed the government to establish a robust data protection framework. Justice B.N. Srikrishna Committee, 2017. Examined data protection issues and recommended a comprehensive law for data protection. Digital Information Security in Healthcare Act.
अब इन्होंने जो बोला था उसी के
Framework for
बाद
Healthcare Data Protection.
डेटा प्रोटेक्शन एक्ट
Computer
आया था
Emergency
कृष्णा
Response
कमेटी के
Team.
बाद
India.
उन्होंने रिकमेंड किया था.
Cybersecurity Directions, April 2022. of certain requires reporting incidents of data breach within 6 hours, maintaining security logs. Conclusion. The DPDP Act and the DPDP rules mark a major step towards a trustworthy and future-ready digital environment in India. They clarify how personal data must be handled, strengthen individual rights, and fix clear responsibilities on organizations.
Right?
1.3 India AI Governance Guidelines.
Next.
Why in the news? Recently, Union Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, MITI, has unveiled India AI Governance Guidelines under the India AI Mission. About India AI Governance Guidelines. It proposes a robust governance framework to foster cutting-edge innovation and safely develop and deploy AI for all, while mitigating risks to individuals and society. Institutional framework to implement guidelines, a high-level body, AI Governance Group. For overall policy formulation, coordination of AI governance in India across all agencies. Or government agencies, MITI, MHA, etc., and sectoral regulators, RBI, CB, TRAI, CCI, etc., for issuing sector-specific rules, handling grievances in their respective domains, etc. O advisory bodies, NITI Aayog, Office of Principal Scientific Advisor, etc., supporting AI Governance Group with regular briefings and strategic advice on AI governance. O standards bodies, BIS, Telecommunication Engineering Center, etc., developing standards in relation to AI, risk taxonomies, certification standards, etc. Issues in AI governance. Digital divide. Rural and underserved regions lag in digital public infrastructure, DPY. High cost of deploying AI solutions and uneven adoption of AI due to weak computing access in sectors like agriculture, healthcare, public services, etc. hinder uniform AI adoption. For example, as per Internet in India 2024 report, 51% rural population still does not access Internet. Discrimination, AI trained on
अब
biased
digital
data
divide देखो आप.
can produce discriminatory outcomes in welfare, policing, etc., deepening existing inequalities and disproportionately affecting marginalized
51%
groups
को अभी भी नहीं है
without proper
internet.
safeguards. Transparency and accountability.
रूरल इंडिया में.
AI's opaque black box decisions hinder transparency and accountability, especially in welfare and law enforcement, making it difficult to assess decisions and hold institutions answerable without clear audit mechanisms. Cybersecurity. Cyber attacks like data manipulation and model hijacking can target AI systems, disrupting public service delivery and leaking sensitive information, impacting AI-enabled governance. Policy and regulation. There is a need to urgently review existing sectoral laws to identify and plug regulatory gaps arising from AI-enabled decision-making, particularly in sensitive domains like healthcare and finance.
Moving forward.
For example, PCPNDT Act must account for AI-based radiology tools that could enable unlawful sex determination. IPR-related issues. AI models trained on copyrighted material without consent raise ownership and compensation disputes, creating uncertainty over whether content creators or AI developers hold rights over resulting outputs. For example, lawsuit against Google for providing AI overviews, feature in search engines that uses Gen AI to provide. A concise AI-generated summary of search results. Petitioners raised concerns that AI overview may divert traffic and may adversely impact the revenue of publishers and content
हम
providers.
भी AI पे पढ़ रहे हैं, ठीक है ना?
Misuse.
The power
Malicious
of
uses
AI.
of AI such as deepfakes, data poisoning, adversarial attacks and AI-driven disinformation campaign
कितना real
can
है, देखो
disrupt
आप.
critical infrastructure, undermine public safety and national security.
है ना?
Initiatives taken for AI governance.
AI has gone so
India,
far.
National Strategy for AI.
He is leading such like a human.
NSAI. NITI Aayog's hashtag AI for All strategy focuses on AI in sectors like healthcare, agriculture, and education.
Education में हम कर रहे हैं use.
Digital Personal Data Protection Act 2023. It enhances data protection for individuals and address AI-related privacy concerns. Global Partnership on AI, GPAI, to direct responsible development and application of AI with a focus on the human rights, inclusion, diversity, and economic prosperity. India is a founding member of GPAI, Global, Europe's AI Act 2024. Europe's first major regulation on AI, categorizing applications into 4 risk levels, that is, unacceptable, high risk, limited risk, and minimal risk. O. Bletchley Declaration,
Bletchley बड़ा important है,
2023.
बहुत important है.
Signed by 28 countries and European Union, it establishes a shared understanding of the opportunities and risks posed by frontier AI. OG7 Pact on AI, 2023. It aims to establish a global framework for responsible development and use of AI systems, and participation is voluntary. OECD AI Principles, 2019. They are first intergovernmental standard on AI and promote innovative, trustworthy AI that respects human rights and democratic values.
OECD principles.
About India, I mission launched in 2024.
ये बहुत important
It
है.
aims to
India
build a
mission.
comprehensive ecosystem
Right.
that by fosters democratizing computing access, enhancing data quality. It seeks to deploy over 10,000 units graphics, GPUs, for advanced AI computing infrastructure. OGPU is a powerful computer chip that process images and graphics faster, run AI programs, and handle complex tasks more efficiently than a regular processor.
Pillars आप देख लेना, कोई दिक्कत
Processing.
नहीं है.
AI. Innovation. It is an umbrella program by MIT2I and
NITI.
implemented by India AI,
Electronics
Independent Business
Information
Division
Technology
under
Department,
Digital
Ministry
India
जो है.
Corporation. Conclusion.
Implemented by India AI,
By coupling
Independent Business
risk-based
Division
regulation
under
with
Digital India
innovation-friendly
Corporation.
standards, investing in inclusive digital infrastructure, and strengthening institutional capacity, India can harness AI as a force multiplier for development rather than a source of exclusion or harm. A collaborative approach guided by transparency, accountability, and global cooperation will be critical to ensure that AI remains aligned with constitutional values, public trust, and long-term national priorities, positioning India as a responsible and credible leader in the global AI ecosystem.
Right.
1.4. Tribunals.
Tribunals.
Why in the news? Recently, SC struck down Tribunal Reforms Act 2021 relating to appointments, tenure, and service conditions of members of various tribunals. Key highlights of the judgment. Legislative override over judicial directions. As per SC, the 2021 Act contradicts binding judicial pronouncements that repeatedly clarified the standards relating appointment, tenure, and functioning of tribunal members. O. Earlier in 2020 Madras Bar Association case, MBA4, SC had struck down the tribunal rules 2020 and in
Main तो आपको tribunal
2021.
समझना है होता क्या है.
Madras
ठीक है?
Bar Association case,
आ गया है वो.
MBA5,
मैं बता
the
दूंगा.
court struck down the Tribunal Reforms Ordinance 2021. Against the doctrine of constitutional supremacy, the Act fails to remove the defects identified in prior judgments and instead reenacts them under a new label. O. This violates the constitutional principles of separation of powers and judicial independence. Present status. SC held that until the Parliament enacts a new act giving effect to its directions in the previous judgments, the directions given in the previous MBA4 and MBA5 cases will continue to operate. National Tribunal Commission. The court directed the Union to form a National Tribunal Commission within a period of 4 months. Key contentious issues in the Act vis-à-vis SC judgment. Tribunal Reforms Act 2021. Tenure and age limit. 4-year tenure with a minimum age limit of 50 years for appointment. Search cum selection. Give and recommendations member to be appointed by the central government. Committee to regarding chairperson. Composition of the above committee. SC judgments. Tenure. Fixed tenure of 4 years insufficient to secure independence of tribunals. OSC held that members should have at least 5 lawyers having a that year tenure, and minimum 10 years of experience must be considered for appointments. O chairperson. Chief Justice of India, CJ1, or judge of SC nominated by CJI. O2 members. Secretaries nominated by Central. Composition. Search cum selection committee, 2020. Rules fail to ensure judicial dominance in the committee. MBA 4 of government. O1 member. In case of appointing chairperson, shall be the outgoing chairperson of that tribunal. In case appointing a member, shall be the sitting chairperson of that tribunal. National Tribunals Commission.
ये
An
important
independent
है.
body to supervise the appointments, functioning, administrative and infrastructural needs of the tribunals. O. Till it is constituted, a separate wing in Ministry of Finance to be established for the purpose. Tribunal system in India.
ये important है.
About tribunals are judicial or quasi-judicial institutions established by law to provide a platform for faster adjudication compared to traditional courts, as well as expertise on certain subject matters. Genesis. History of tribunals in India dates back to 1941 with the establishment of the first tribunal, Income Tax Appellate Tribunal.
पहला इनकम टैक्स तो आया
Constitutional
था.
status, 42nd Amendment Act 1976 inserted Articles 323A and 323B dealing with
42nd
tribunals.
Amendment से आया
Of
था, बड़ा
Article
important है.
323, they empowered Parliament to constitute administrative tribunals, both at central and state level. 4. Adjudication of matters concerning recruitment and service conditions of public servants. O. Article 323B specified certain subjects, like taxation and land reforms, for which Parliament or state legislatures may constitute tribunals by enacting a law. In 2010, the Supreme Court held that subject matters under Article 323B are not exclusive and could extend to any subject matters specified in the 7th Schedule. Appeals. Currently, tribunals have been created both as substitutes to high courts and as subordinate to high courts. O. In the former, appeals from tribunals lie directly with SC. In the latter case, appeals are heard by the corresponding high court. In Chandan Kumar case, 2017, SC held that appeals against decisions of tribunals were allowed in the division bench of high courts. Significance of tribunals. Specialization. Each tribunal is given specific jurisdiction to hear and decide cases within its
Division
designated
bench अगर
area
high
of
court की रहेगी तो allow हो
expertise.
जाएगा
Though
tribunal
some
के आगे.
tribunals have appellate jurisdiction, meaning
Okay.
they hear appeals from decisions made by lower authorities or government bodies. Speedy resolution. This is particularly important in areas where timely decisions are crucial, such as service matters, tax disputes, and environmental issues. Reduced caseload. By handling specific types of cases, tribunals contribute to reducing the burden on traditional courts, helping to address the issue of judicial backlog. Accessibility. Tribunals are geographically dispersed, with benches located across the country. Efficiency in service matters. Administrative tribunals, such as the Central Administrative Tribunal, CAT, expedite the resolution of service-related matters for government employees. Constitutional balance between judicial independence and parliamentary sovereignty in India. System of checks and balances. India's constitutional framework distributes power amongst 3 branches of government, establishing an interplay between administrative sovereignty and judicial supremacy. While the Parliament could debate on policies, financial allocations, and implementation issues, the judiciary decides on the constitutionality and legality of executive actions. Constitutional supremacy. It acts as the anchoring principle, rejecting rigid scales between Parliament and judiciary, making them both inferior to the Constitution. Judicial review. Article 13 prohibits the state from making laws that violate fundamental rights, and through judicial review, judiciary can declare any law violative of basic structure or fundamental rights as unconstitutional. Limitations on Parliament's amending power. A constitution. Amendment bill needs support of more than half the members in each House of Parliament, and at least 2/3 of the members present and voting. Additionally, ratification by more than half the states is required for amendments that affect powers of states and the judiciary. Further, Parliament cannot amend the basic structure of the Constitution. Immunity to the members. Constitution guarantees protections to parliamentary proceedings and to members of Parliament, who enjoy immunity from court proceedings for anything said or voted in the Parliament. Similarly, the conduct of a SC or HC judge cannot be discussed in Parliament unless a motion for removal is under consideration. Conclusion. While there have been instances of judicial activism and parliamentary legislations overriding court rulings, a healthy convention respecting the boundaries of each is essential to ensure that neither institution holds absolute power.
Next.
1.5. Legal aid in India. Why in the news? Recently, the Legal Services Authorities Act, 1987, which was implemented on November 9, 1995, and annually observed as National Legal Services Day, completed 30 years of its implementation. Journey of Legal Aid in India. 1949, Bombay Government Committee emphasized the government's duty to provide free legal aid, for example, coverage for court fees, lawyer fees, etc. 1958, 14th Law Commission report. Emphasized free legal aid was the state's obligation. National Conference on Legal Aid, 1970, and Expert Committee Report, 1973, chaired by V.R. Krishna Iyer, advocated for a statutory basis for legal aid. 1976. Legal aid was formalized under the Constitution with the insertion of Article 39A. 1980. The Committee for Implementing Legal Aid Schemes was established under Justice P. N. Bhagwati to manage legal aid programs nationwide. 1987. Legal Services Authorities Act 1987 was enacted. About Legal Services Act 1987. The Act established a three-tier system to provide free and competent legal services or National Legal Services Authority, NALSA, headed by the Chief Justice of India, O. State Legal Services Authorities, SLSA, headed by the Chief Justice of High Court, O. District Legal Services Authorities, DLSA, headed by the District Judge. Persons eligible for getting free legal services, OSC/ST members, women and children, victims of trafficking or disasters, the mentally ill or disabled, industrial workmen, persons in custody, and those with income below the prescribed limit, below 5 lakh rupees for Supreme Court cases. O states can decide the threshold for eligibility under the Act, which varies from 1 lakh to 3 lakh. Establishment of Lok Adalats, an alternative dispute resolution mechanism that settles cases amicably, including pre-litigation matters. See the box after the article. Role of NALSA. Policy and scheme development. NALSA lays down policies and frames schemes for legal services implementation. Victim compensation. Through schemes like Compensation Scheme for Women, Victims/Survivors of Sexual Assault/Other Crimes. NALSA aims to provide compensation and support to women who are victims or survivors of sexual assault or other crimes. Capacity building. It mandates standardized selection processes for lawyers and develops training modules for legal services lawyers and paralegal volunteers, PLVs. Prison legal aid oversees the functioning of jail legal aid clinics, PLACs, in almost all prisons. Legal aid and assistance. It includes advocate representation, process fee payments, document preparation, including drafting and translation, and provision of certified copies of legal documents and proceedings. Social justice litigation, PIL. For example, NALSA filed a PIL that resulted in the Supreme Court's landmark 2014 judgment recognizing the rights of the transgender
ये
community.
बड़ा important है.
Note, free legal services also include providing aid and advice to help beneficiaries access welfare schemes of the
ट्रांसजेंडर के
central or
अगेंस्ट
state
अभी
government
वापस से एक बिल
and
आया
to
है
ensure their
2026 में.
overall
यहाँ पे मैं
access to
आपको पॉज
justice.
करना चाहूँगा.
Challenges relate.
There is a recent bill on the transgender bill. और transgender बिल अभी रिसेंटली 2026 में प्रपोज हुआ है, यही अभी बजट सेशन के अंदर. इसके अंदर आप पढ़ लेना क्योंकि ये वापस से नालसा का जो एक केस है 2014 का, जहाँ पे विरोध हुआ था बहुत ज़्यादा गवर्नमेंट का. ट्रांसजेंडर नहीं, 2014 में पहली बार ट्रांसजेंडर डिक्लेयर कर दिया गया था एज एन ऑफिशियल जेंडर. उसी को लेकर के अभी वापस से विरोध चल रहा है. कोई एक नया ट्रांसजेंडर 2026 का बिल आया है, ठीक है. सो यू कैन सी दैट बिल. बस इतना बताना था मेरे को. ओके, नाउ कंटिन्यू.
To legal aid in India. Lack of awareness and legal literacy. Only 15% of rural residents are aware of these free legal services. NALSA Report 2022. Substandard quality of representation. Legal aid to the poor often becomes poor legal aid due to inadequate remuneration, high workload, etc. Underfunding. Department-related Parliamentary Committee Report 2024 flagged India's per capita free legal aid spend is critically low. That is, just 75 pays per capita annually. Digital divide. While tech programs like Telelaw exist, their effectiveness is limited in rural areas due to low digital literacy and inadequate digital infrastructure. For example, only 33% of rural India has access to the internet, compared to 67% in urban areas.
अब ये मेन है.
Limited physical outreach.
वो तो एक
One
report
lawyer
की
for every
official है,
10,000
मतलब
people in rural India versus one for every 1,000 in urban
मतलब
areas
इंडिया में
portrays low
अर्बन में
availability in
डबल है
rural areas.
और रूरल में 33 है.
Conclusion.
बस.
A stronger legal aid system requires better public awareness, improved quality of counsel, and enhanced institutional capacity. Using technology, empowering PLVs, and adopting a needs-based approach for vulnerable groups can greatly improve access to justice. Lok Adalat. Lok Adalat is an ADR, Alternative Dispute Resolution,
Yes.
forum that settles pending or pre-litigation cases reducing judicial pendency.
बस ये important है
First
क्या?
held in Gujarat, 1982. Given statutory status under Legal Services Authorities Act, 1987, which was amended in 2002 to establish permanent Lok Adalats. There are three types of Lok Adalats. O State Lok Adalats, created organized as per the local conditions and needs. O National Lok Adalats, conducted quarterly for settlements in all courts in one day. O Permanent Lok Adalats, permanent establishments in most districts to provide compulsory pre-litigative mechanism for disputes related to public utility services, handles, compoundable criminal, or other disputes e.g. labor disputes. Non-compoundable offences, where settlement is not possible, are excluded. O. India's legal aid system has reached 44.22 lakh people, 2022 to 25, and resolved 23.58 crore cases through Lok Adalats. Awards are final and binding with no appeal, has civil court powers, can set its own procedure, and charges no court fee. Offers procedural flexibility, no strict application of the CPC and Evidence Act, and direct interaction with the judges. 1.6. News and Shorts. 1.6.1 Supreme Court on Assent to Bills. A 5-judge bench of the Supreme Court in the 16th presidential reference, under Article 143, held that court cannot impose any timelines for decisions of the President and the Governor on granting assent to bills under Articles 200/201 of the Constitution. Previously, in April 2025, the Supreme Court prescribed specific time limits for the Governor and President to act on bills under Article 200 and 201. Article 143.
अब ये बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट है ये वाला जो है ना, यहाँ पे आपको याद होगा 2025 में अप्रैल के अंदर एक बिल आया, एक सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने अपनी पावर का यूज़ करते हुए 142 के अंदर ये बोला था कि एक टाइम लिमिट हो जाएगी 3 महीना 1 महीना 2 महीना को जिस टाइप की टाइम लिमिट बोल रखी थी। गवर्नर को जो बिल है वो एसेंट करने ही पड़ेंगे और स्टेट काउंसिल ऑफ मिनिस्टर्स की बात माननी पड़ेगी। बट रिसेंटली 2025 के नवंबर में वापस से सुप्रीम कोर्ट की 5 जज बेंच बैठी है और इसने बोला है कि 16 प्रेसिडेंशियल डिफरेंस 143। सो बेसिकली प्रेसिडेंट ने 143 के अंदर जो कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में नॉर्म है उसके अंदर कोर्ट को 9 क्वेश्चन भेजे थे और बोले थे कि भाई ये गवर्नेंस से रिलेटेड है, मेरे को बताओ। फिर इसी के बेसिस पे इन्होंने अपनी जो कंसल्टेशन के अंदर 5 जज बेंच ने डिलीवर किया है टाइमलाइंस को लेकर के, वो ये है कि कोई टाइमलाइन नहीं होएगी। कोर्ट हेल्ड दैट कोर्ट कैन नॉट इम्पोज एनी टाइमलाइंस ऑन डिसीजन फॉर प्रेसिडेंट एंड द गवर्नर ऑन ग्रांटिंग असेंट टू बिल्स अंडर आर्टिकल 200 and 201 ऑफ द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन। सो 200 क्या होता है? 200 होता है बेसिकली आपका नॉर्मल ये क्या हो गया, 200 असेंट टू बिल होता है और 201 में बिल रिजर्व किए जाते हैं, 200 में स्टेट के अंदर, ठीक है। 201 में रिजर्व किए जाते हैं प्रेसिडेंट के लिए और 143 अलाउज प्रेसिडेंट टू सीक ओपिनियन ऑफ सुप्रीम कोर्ट सिग्निफिकेंट लीगल। तो 9 क्वेश्चन पूछे थे यार यहाँ पे और उसका रिटर्न करते हुए इन्होंने बताया ना। फिर अदर की हाईलाइट्स, डीम्ड असेंट इज एलियन टू द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन, ये इंपॉर्टेंट है। डीम्ड असेंट मीन्स कि कोर्ट कैन नॉट अज्यूम दैट अ बिल इज अप्रूव्ड मेयरली बिकॉज द कोर्ट ऑर्डर टाइम हैज लैप्स्ड। यस, तो ये एक तरीके से जुडिशियल ओवररीच हो रहा था। जो यहाँ पे आता है कि आप लेजिस्लेटिव काम में दखल अंदाजी कर रहे हो, सॉरी एग्जीक्यूटिव काम में दखल अंदाजी कर रहे हो जो कि गवर्नमेंट का काम है ना। सो डीम्ड असेंट वाला कि यार अगर कोर्ट बोल देता है कि इतने महीने बाद पास हो जाएगा ऑटोमेटिक, तो ये वाला नहीं चलेगा। कोर्ट ने मना कर दिया अपने वापस से 5 जज के बेंच में, ठीक है। नाउ सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने, नाउ इट वुड अमाउंट टू जुडिशियल असर्पेशन ऑफ कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल पावर ऑफ प्रेसिडेंट गवर्नर एंड वॉयलेट सेपरेशन ऑफ पावर एंड कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल स्कीम ऑफ फेडरल गवर्नेंस। तो ये सब कुछ वॉयलेट कर रहे हैं। फिर सेकेंड है आपका, गवर्नर और प्रेसिडेंट कैन नॉट सिट ऑन बिल्स इनडेफिनेटली एज इट वॉयलेट्स फेडरलिज्म। अब ये भी बोला उन्होंने कि गवर्नर बैठ नहीं सकता अंधा कभी भी, कितनी देर भी, वॉयलेट करता फेडरलिज्म को, लेजिस्लेचर की विल को एंड कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन मोरालिटी, मतलब एक तरीके से पुश तो दिया है। देन लिमिटेड जुडिशियल रिव्यू की बात की गई है कि कोर्ट्स कैन इंटरवीन इफ द गवर्नर और प्रेसिडेंट एक्ट्स इन मेलाफाइड इंटेंट। अगर जो इंटेंट है गवर्नर का या फिर प्रेसिडेंट का वो मेलिफाइड है, एक तरीके से हार्म कर रहा है पब्लिक इंटरेस्ट को, तो उस केस में लिमिटेड जुडिशियल रिव्यू किया जा सकता है. रिव्यू लिमिटेड टू प्रोसेस नॉट मेरिट्स ऑफ असेंट. प्रोसेस पे लिमिटेड है और मेरिट्स के लिए नहीं मैटर करता है. द प्रेसिडेंट इज नॉट रिक्वायर्ड टू सीक एडवाइस ऑफ सुप्रीम कोर्ट व्हेनेवर अ गवर्नर रिजर्व्स अ बिल फॉर असेंट एज सब्जेक्टिव सेटिस्फैक्शन प्रेसिडेंट सफिशिएंट. अब इन्होंने डायरेक्टली ऐसा बोला कि जो मुर्मू जी हैं उनसे कि भाई आप बार बार हमसे एडवाइस लेने की ज़रूरत नहीं है, आपके पास इतनी सब्जेक्टिव सेटिस्फैक्शन है और आपका मन किया तो आप कर सकते हैं, जो आपका लीगल राइट है, आपकी लीगल अथॉरिटी है उसके अंडर. सो ये भी बोला है कोर्ट ने कि भाई बार बार हमसे एडवाइस 143 के अंदर मत लो, जो आपकी राइट में है आप अपनी सब्जेक्टिव सेटिस्फैक्शन पे उस पर डेफिनेटली काम करो, ऐसा बोला है. ठीक है. अब सबसे इम्पोर्टेंट ये है कि 201 के अंदर ये 200 में तो 4 वो होते हैं कि एक तो एसेंट कर देना, दे देना पास, फिर दूसरा विदहोल्ड रोक देना, बिल को रिजेक्ट कर देना, तीसरा होता है रिटर्न द बिल फॉर रिकंसिडरेशन बाय द स्टेट लेजिस्लेचर, और चौथा होता है रिजर्व द बिल फॉर प्रेसिडेंट्स कंसिडरेशन. अब इसके अंदर बेसिकली गवर्नर के पास पावर होती है बिकॉज ही इज एक्टिंग और शी इज एक्टिंग लाइक अ एजेंट ऑफ द सेंटर, इसीलिए हम कैनेडियन मॉडल फॉलो करते हैं. नाउ द प्रेसिडेंट, यहाँ पे ये भी बोल रखा है 201 में कि जब प्रेसिडेंट के लिए रिजर्व हो जाएगा, प्रेसिडेंट शैल डिक्लेयर. अब इसके पास एब्सोल्यूट वेटो होता है, मतलब सस्पेंसिव वेटो होता है स्टेट गवर्नर के पास, लेकिन 201 में प्रेसिडेंट के पास अगर चला गया तो एब्सोल्यूट वेटो होता है कि अगर उसने वापस से बोला कि रिटर्न हो जाए बिल और रिटर्न करके वापस आता तो अगर गवर्नर होता तो उसको पास करना पड़ता, लेकिन प्रेसिडेंट के पास वापस से मौका है, वो बोलेगा नहीं पास होने दूंगा तो नहीं होगा बिल पास. ये ताकत है सेंटर की. इसलिए वो आपकी जो कैनेडियन मॉडल है ना कि इंडियन स्टेट्स आर डिस्ट्रक्टेबल एंड सेंटर्स आर इनडिस्ट्रक्टेबल, वो वाला मॉडल यहाँ पे अप्लाई होता है इन दोनों आर्टिकल से. व्हेन अ बिल इज द प्रेसिडेंट शैल डिक्लेयर ईदर दैट ही असेंट्स द बिल और विदहोल्ड असेंट और रिटर्न द बिल फॉर द कंसिडरेशन ऑफ द लेजिस्लेचर. अब यहाँ पे कोई टाइमलाइन फिक्स नहीं है, पॉकेट वेटो है प्रेसिडेंट के पास भी रिजर्व बिल्स पे. ठीक है, बस ये इंपॉर्टेंट है, यहाँ से क्वेश्चन आ सकता है.
Allows the President to seek the opinion of the Supreme Court on significant legal or factual questions. Other key highlights of the judgment. Deemed assent is alien to the Constitution. Courts cannot assume that a bill is approved merely because the court-ordered time has lapsed. O. It would amount to judicial usurpation of constitutional powers of the President/Governor and violates separation of powers and constitutional scheme of federal governance. Governor/President cannot sit on bills indefinitely, as it violates federalism, legislature's will, and constitutional morality. Limited judicial review. Courts can intervene if the governor/president acts with malified intent. O review limited to process, not merits of assent. The president is not required to seek advice of the Supreme Court whenever a governor reserves a bill for her assent, as the subjective satisfaction of the president is sufficient. 1.6.2
आप कर सकते हो, आप कर दो अपने लेवल पे, बार-बार एडवाइस मत लो.
The Supreme Court's Center for Research and Planning released white paper on artificial intelligence and the judiciary. The paper reviews the safe use of AI in the judiciary, outlines key ethical challenges, offers recommendations, and draws on international case studies to illustrate emerging risks. Key highlights of the report. Risks and ethical challenges of AI, artificial intelligence. Over-reliance and loss of human judgment. It can weaken judicial discretion, and the opaque nature of models reduces accountability. Hallucinations and fabricated content. It may produce false information or non-existent citations. For example, U.S. case Roberto Mata versus Avianca and Coomer versus Lindell. Algorithmic bias. For example, the U.S. Compass tool, challenged in State versus Loomis, showed potential racial bias. Others, deepfakes and evidence manipulation, privacy and confidentiality, risks, intellectual property concerns, etc. Key recommendations. Create AI ethics committees. Courts should establish bodies with technical and legal experts to review AI tools and set deployment standards. Prefer secure in-house AI systems.
AI के ऊपर
Developing internal tools reduces confidentiality, security, and data exposure risks.
case
Adopt a
backlog and
formal,
administrative
ethical
delay.
AI policy. A clear framework must.
अब ये तो होता रहेगा. देखो इंडिया में ई कोर्ट्स मिशन मोड प्रोजेक्ट है, ठीक है. AI tools to backlog and administrative delay. Then SUPE, Supreme Court Portal for Assistance in Court Efficiency है, helps judges in summarize case records. Then SUAS है, SUA Supreme Court विधिक अनुवाद software translated greater than 36,000 Supreme Court judgments into 19 Indian languages. Then है Teres in AI based transcription. Legra, legal research analysis assistant. ग्लोबल इनिशिएटिव में यूनेस्को ने रिकमेंडेशन ऑन एथिक्स एंड आर्टिफिशियल रिकमेंडेशन है, टूल किट ऑन AI एंड रूल ऑफ लॉ, ठीक है. फिर OECD है, पब्लिशेस प्रिंसिपल्स ऑफ आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस, द फर्स्ट इंटरगवर्नमेंटल स्टैंडर्ड फॉर AI. EU एक्ट, AI एक्ट, EU का AI एक्ट है रेगुलेटिंग हाई रिस्क जुडिशियल AI सिस्टम्स. नेशनल मॉडल्स फॉर एग्जांपल ब्राज़ील का एथॉस है, सिंगापुर का लॉनेट AI है, ठीक है. ये सारे ग्लोबल मॉडल्स हैं AI को रेगुलेट करने के लिए लॉ में.
Define authorized uses, responsibilities, and accountability mechanisms. Others mandate disclosure and audit trails, provide comprehensive training, etc. 1.6.3 Prisons in India 2025 report. Published by Center for Research and Planning, Supreme Court of India. This report examines prison manuals, stereotypes, mental health support, wages, and technological reforms, proposing a human rights-based approach to prison administration. Key issues in Indian prisons. Governance.
Prison report
There
आई
is
है.
diversity in prison governance as prisons fall in the legislative and administrative domain of the states under List 2, Schedule 7 of the Constitution. India follows the United Nations Standard Minimum Rules for the treatment of prisoners, known as the Nelson Mandela Rules, which advocates the humanization of prison institutions. Overcrowding. Prisons have an occupancy rate of 131.4%, and 3 out of every 4 prisoners are under trials. Open prisons remain underutilized with an occupancy rate of 74%.
नेल्सन मंडेला
Stereotypes.
रूल्स आते हैं यहाँ पे.
Many prison manuals refer to prison work related to conservancy and sanitation as menial or work of degrading character, which perpetuates a hierarchical view of labor. Caste bias. Some prison manuals continue to retain provisions assigned prison work based on caste identity. This has been held unconstitutional in Sukanya Shanta case. Wage disparity. Disparity ranges from 20 rupees, much lower than lowest minimum wage, in Mizoram to 524 rupees in Karnataka. Women prisoners. Prison manuals do not explicitly provide for the right to reproductive choice and limit women prisoners to predominantly domestic tasks like cooking, denying them equal access to work. Ineffective legal aid. Quality of legal aid for prisoners suffers due to the lack of physical and digital infrastructure. 1.6.4 Model Youth Gram Sabha, MYGSA. Ministry of Panchayati Raj, in collaboration with the Ministry of Education and Ministry of Tribal Affairs, launched MYGS initiative. About MYGS, it is a pioneering initiative to strengthen Janbhagidari and promote participatory local governance by engaging students in simulated Gram Sabha sessions. It is aligned with National Education Policy 2020 and will be implemented across Jawahar Navodaya Vidyalayas, JNVs, Eklavya Model Residential Schools, EMRS, and state government schools. JNVs are residential schools established under NEP 1986 to provide education to rural children irrespective of their socio-economic status. OEMRSS aim to provide quality education to scheduled tribes, ST students in areas having more than 50% ST population and at least 20,000 tribal persons.
Right.
2. International relations. 2.1 Rising global nuclear risk and disarmament. India.
Okay. So here we are going to take a break. और 5 minutes का break लेते हैं, ठीक है, whatever. Alexa, start timer of 5 minutes.
5 minutes, starting now.
ठीक है, 5 minute का break है. We are going to start with IR after this. ठीक है. You can take the break on your level, right? Okay, so welcome back. Let's continue.
Approach 2. Why in the news? Recently, the US president announced the resumption of nuclear weapons testing, a move that could weaken non-proliferation and disarmament efforts built over
Rising
decades.
global nuclear risk.
Factors behind rising
India's
nuclear risk.
approach.
Geopolitical tensions. Rising conflicts push states toward nuclear securitization and readiness. For example, SIPRI Yearbook 2024 notes that operational warheads have been increasing yearly. Doctrinal ambiguity. Lack of clarity on nuclear response thresholds increases miscalculation risk. OEG. Uncertainty on retaliation to cyber attack on nuclear command systems. Treaty breakdown. Collapse of arms control agreements weakens communication and arms limits, raising escalation risk. For example, fall of INF treaty, US-Russia, US withdrawal from Iran nuclear deal, etc. Faster delivery systems. New missile tech compresses decision time and raises misidentification dangers. For example, hypersonic missiles reduce reaction time for states, increasing rapid escalation risk. False alarm risks. Early warning errors can trigger accidental conflict unless checked by humans. For example, 1983 Soviet false alarm incident. Space militarization. Arms competition expanding to space creates new strategic instability. For example, US Space Force expansion. Weaponization of AI. Increased use of AI in military systems can raise nuclear escalation risk by speeding decisions and increasing chances of misinterpretation, even outside nuclear platforms. Nuclear disarmament. It aims to reduce or eliminate nuclear weapons globally through unilateral decisions or international agreements with the goal of a nuclear-free world. Key issues O. Ineffective global platforms. Multilateral bodies show minimal progress, weakening confidence. For example, Conference on Disarmament stagnation over decades reflects stalled diplomacy. O. Treaty loopholes. Ambiguous clauses allow delay or avoidance of commitments. For example, NPT lacks strict timelines for arsenal reduction. Exit from agreements. Withdrawal sets precedents for non-compliance and erodes norms. E.g. North Korea's NPT exit. States outside the framework. De facto nuclear-armed countries not bound by core treaties challenge. Universality. For example, India, Israel, and Pakistan remain outside NPT obligations.
ये आया नहीं थे कभी.
O commitment implementation gap. States endorse disarmament in forums but upgrade weapons simultaneously. For example, Russia backs NPT but also modernizes its delivery systems. O dependency on nuclear deterrence. Military spending gaps push reliance on nuclear deterrence for strategic parity. For example, Russia sustains nuclear deterrence against NATO's stronger conventional forces. O lack of binding rules for delivery systems. Absence of dedicated legal controls enables unregulated missile competition. India's stand on nuclear disarmament core principle. India supports global, non-discriminatory, verifiable nuclear that disarmament applies equally to all states. First to call for test ban. India was the first country in 1954 to call for a worldwide ban on nuclear testing. Nuclear Ban Convention. India proposed a global convention in 1978 to prohibit the use or threat of nuclear weapons. Phased disarmament plan. India introduced a UNGA action plan in 1988 for eliminating nuclear weapons in 3 phases. Stand on global treaties. ONPT. Opposes because it recognizes nuclear weapons for only 5 countries. OCTBT.
इंडिया का stand.
Not signed due to lack of focus on nuclear disarmament and India's security concerns. OTPNW. Not supported as it lacks new legal standards for disarmament. Multilateral approach. India advocates negotiated universal agreements and supports a nuclear weapons convention within the Conference on Disarmament, which it considers the main platform for a global nuclear ban treaty. Conclusion. Mitigating nuclear risks will require rebuilding trust through renewed arms control, transparent doctrines, and inclusive multilateralism that keeps pace with emerging technologies. India's consistent advocacy for universal, non-discriminatory, and verifiable disarmament, combined with restraint, risk reduction measures, and civilian oversight, offers a pragmatic pathway. Sustained dialogue, strengthened global institutions, and incremental confidence building can together bridge the gap between deterrence realities and the shared objective of a nuclear weapon-free world.
यहाँ पे आपको मैं एक चीज़ बताना चाहता हूँ, ये अपनी क्या क्या ग्लोबल ट्रीटीज़ हैं, है ना. सो वी हैव ट्रीटी ऑन नॉन प्रोलिफरेशन ऑफ न्यूक्लियर वेपन्स, NPT 1970 में साइन हुई थी. NPT prevents spread of nuclear weapons and promotes disarmament, number 1. Then you have CTBT, comprehensive nuclear test ban treaty. comprehensive nuclear एक में ही है. then test ban treaty TBT comprehensive, ठीक है. तो prohibit nuclear explosion test but awaits ratification by key countries. ratification भी चाहिए, लेकिन और ये अपोज करता है कि आप न्यूक्लियर एक्सप्लोजन ना करें. then treaty on the prohibition of nuclear weapons, TPNW 2021. TPNW 2021 ये वापस एक ट्रीटी हुई है ऑन न्यूक्लियर वेपन्स. लीगली बाइंड्स कंट्रीज टू रिफ्रेन फ्रॉम न्यूक्लियर वेपन्स एक्टिविटीज़. अब क्या है, ये लीगली बाइंड करता है, तो इंडिया इसमें नहीं होगा ऑब्वियसली, क्योंकि इंडिया अपने हाथ खोले रखना चाहता है, साथ ही साथ अपोज भी करना चाहता है कि न्यूक्लियर नहीं होना चाहिए. देन द नेक्स्ट इज Conference on Disarmament 1978 serves as a forum for negotiating arms control agreements, where United Nations Office for Disarmament Affairs, UNODA. So basically ये क्या है, aims for general and complete disarmament globally. Then you have International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, Atomic Energy Agency है ना, IAEA agency A. So basically IAEA ensures safe and peaceful use of nuclear technology. Again, Pact for the Future 2024 लेटेस्ट है, 2024 में साइन हुआ है, और रिफॉर्म्स द गोल ऑफ टोटल न्यूक्लियर डिसआर्ममेंट, कि सब अपने हटा दो न्यूक्लियर वेपन. बट यू नो, आफ्टर वेनेजुएला एंड ईरान, जो न्यूक्लियर रेस है वो और बढ़ जाएगी, कम नहीं होगी, क्योंकि दुनिया समझ चुकी है कि अगर न्यूक्लियर पावर नहीं है तुम्हारे पास तो यूएस तुम्हें फोड़ के रख देगा, और अगर न्यूक्लियर पावर है नॉर्थ कोरिया की तरह तो यूएस 10 बार सोचेगा अटैक करने से पहले, नहीं तो अभी तक ख़त्म हो चुका होता नॉर्थ कोरिया. ठीक है, आगे बढ़ जाता है. G2
2.2 G2. Why in the news? At the recent APEC summit in Busan, South Korea, the US president described his meeting with the Chinese president as a G2 engagement, implying a US-China duopoly in global affairs. Background of the meeting. The meeting took place in the backdrop of an escalating trade war between US and China. It resulted in a temporary trade truce, including lowering of US tariffs on China, relaxation on export of rare earths from China to US, etc.
China.
G2, group of two. The G2 concept was first proposed in 2005 by economist C. Fred Bergston. The terminology reflects formal recognition of China's great power status and promotes the idea that the US and China jointly shoulder responsibility for major global issues such as macroeconomic stability, global warming, etc., effectively dividing the world into two spheres of influence. Implications of G2 duopoly. Global duopoly and strategic realignment.
इंडिया के लिए तो अच्छा नहीं है.
The G2 framing signals a shift in world order by acknowledging China as a near equal to the US, prioritizing US-China cooperation while sidelining other powers like EU, Russia, India, and Japan. Economic leverage for China. China's weaponization of rare earth exports reinforces its confidence in holding future bargaining advantages. Eroding security guarantees. US allies fear that a G2 setup could reduce the US military presence in East Asia and weaken security commitments. For example, Taiwan. Strained India-US relationship. The shift comes amid already tense ties, including enhanced tariffs on Indian goods. Further, the G2 concept fuels uncertainty about the future of the India-US partnership in the Indo-Pacific region to counter China's rise. For example, postponement of the Quad Summit. Key determinants limiting G2 formation. Political and ideological differences. The two nations have vastly different political systems and worldviews. The US champions a rules-based liberal order based on democracy, while China prioritizes sovereignty and statal development. Mutual distrust and rivalry. The relationship is primarily defined by strategic competition and rivalry, not cooperation. Structural issues such as the status of Taiwan, territorial disputes in the South China Sea, trade wars, and technology restrictions fuel deep suspicion and make a genuine, long-term partnership impossible. China's rejection of the concept. China has historically resisted formal G2 framing, preferring multilateralism via the United Nations or BRICS, mainly to avoid being seen as a junior partner of the US. Way ahead for India. Preserving strategic autonomy by avoiding dependence or subordinate alignment with any single power. For example, participation in BRICS, Quad, etc. Diversify economic and security partnerships. To minimize vulnerabilities and broaden strategic options by finalizing more free trade agreements, FTAs. For example, with EU,
न्यू के साथ किया
deepening
है
collaboration
अभी
with like-minded regional and global
Summer
partners to
में
advance national interests.
प्राइम मिनिस्टर ऑफ इंडिया
For
विल गो
example,
टू यू बहुत सारी
ASEAN.
विजिट भी करेंगे कंट्रीज
Conclusion. While talk of a G2 signals the enduring weight of US-China relations, deep mistrust and ideological differences make a true duopoly unlikely. For India, the priority is to uphold strategic autonomy, expand diverse partnerships, and work with like-minded countries to strengthen a multipolar global order. 2.3. G20 Summit 2025. Why in news? The 20th G20 Summit was held in Johannesburg, South Africa, under the theme of solidarity, equality, and sustainability. More on the news. South Africa's G20 presidency was guided by the African philosophy of Ubuntu. I am because we are. It was the first ever G20 summit held on African soil.
Ubuntu
Key takeaways of the G20 Summit 2025.
अफ्रीकन सॉइल पे हुआ है
Johannesburg Declaration.
जोहान्सबर्ग साउथ
Debt
अफ्रीका में
sustainability.
सॉलिडारिटी इक्वालिटी
It
एंड
proposed a
सस्टेनेबिलिटी
cost of capital commission to examine structural issues that drive up borrowing costs for developing economies. Global resilience and development. O pledged universal coverage of early warning systems by implementing UN Early Warnings for All initiative by 2027 for disaster risk reduction. O launched the AI for Africa initiative to expand computing power and talent across African countries. Energy and climate transition. O Mission 300, led by World Bank Group and African Development Bank, aims to connect 300 million people to electricity in Africa by 2030. O reaffirmed the commitment to triple global renewable energy capacity and double the global average annual rate of energy efficiency improvements by 2030. G20 Critical Minerals Framework is a voluntary and non-binding blueprint to focus on securing sustainable value chains, investment in mineral exploration, and strengthen governance for sustainable mining practices.
जोहान्सबर्ग डिक्लेरेशन हुआ है साउथ अफ्रीका में है ये
It fully preserves the sovereign right of mineral endowed their endowments for inclusive economic growth. Countries. 2. Harness. Youth and gender targets. O adopted the Nelson Mandela Bay target
Important
to reduce
है.
the rate of youth not in employment, education, or training, NEET, by 5% by 2030. O adopted revised Brisbane at the Queenie goal. Force reduced the gender gap participation by 25% by 2030 from 2012 levels. In Labour. Significance of the G20.
टारगेट आया है
Legitimacy and inclusivity.
नॉट
The G20 brings together advanced economies, G7,
5%
and the emerging market economies, BRICS, giving its decisions greater global legitimacy than any smaller grouping. The inclusion of the AU further solidified its representative stature. Economic crisis management. It serves as the primary coordinating body for global economic policy, having demonstrated its efficacy in preventing the 2008 financial crisis from escalating into a global depression. Multilateral reform driver. It acts as a powerful collective voice to drive the reform agenda of key international institutions, specifically the IMF, World Bank, and WTO. It aims to ensure that they are fit for the challenges of the 21st century and represents the multipolar reality. Global agenda. CETA, the G20, effectively establishes and mainstream key global norms and policies, from international taxation, base erosion and profit shifting, BEPS, global minimum tax, to the adoption of digital public infrastructure, DPI, models, and the framework for global efforts. Effectiveness, related to Global South in G20 Summit 2025. O. Shifting power dynamics. The 4-year continuum of Global South presidencies, Indonesia, India, Brazil, and South Africa, successfully used the platform to articulate development priorities such as debt sustainability, building a fairer international order at the global stage. O. Africa at the center. G20's ability to achieve a consensus declaration, despite major geopolitical rifts, demonstrates operational resilience and growing influence of the Global South. Challenges faced by G20 in contemporary world order. Consensus fatigue. Rising tensions and diverging interests among major powers, for example, US-China rivalry, Russia-USA issues, create profound diplomatic friction, leading to vague and watered-down language in declarations on sensitive issues. Undermined legitimacy. The absence of key world leader, for example, USA, from 2025 summit due to political disagreements undermines the G20's legitimacy as the premier global steering committee. Non-binding pledges.
US नहीं आया था.
G20 commitments are non-binding in nature. Moreover,
Political
lack of
disagreement
enforcement
undermines the
mechanism
G20's
leads to chronic delays in implementing critical pledges, particularly in climate finance and debt restructuring.
Trump नहीं आया था.
Ineffective common framework for uncommon challenges. For example, G20. Common framework for debt treatment has been criticized for being too slow and complex. Other challenges. O. Protectionism and trade. Despite commitments to free trade, a resurgence of nationalistic industrial policies and subsidies among major members threatens to create geo-economic fragmentation and undermine the global trading system. For example, MAGA in USA. O. Agenda. Overload. The G20's agenda has expanded significantly to include a vast array of issues: AI governance, health security, gender equality, etc., which can dilute focus and strain resources, further contributing to implementation difficulties. Conclusion. India's ability to drive G20 priorities on debt relief, critical minerals, and digital public infrastructure will define its role in shaping a multipolar world order. The Johannesburg Summit therefore marks a strategic inflection point for India to translate agenda setting into sustained global leadership. 2.4.
यहाँ पे यार एक चीज़ आपको बताना चाहूँगा और अपने भी समझना चाहूँगा कि ये बहुत अच्छा दे रखा है यहाँ पे कि जो मेंबर्स हैं G7 के वो हैं कनाडा, फ्रांस, इटली, जापान, US, UK एंड जर्मनी. ये याद होने चाहिए. देखो P5 नेशन है कि नहीं है इसके अंदर. P5 में US आता है, UK आता है ना, और आता है फ्रांस आता है, ठीक है. नहीं, P5 नेशन सारे नहीं है, ये 3 मेन नेशन है. इसके अलावा जो कनाडा, जर्मनी, इटली, जापान है, ये P5 के नेशन नहीं है. 2 नेशन और कौन से हैं? एक है आपका रशिया, है ना, और क्या मिस कर रहे हैं हम? फ्रांस, UK, रशिया, US एंड चाइना. सो चाइना भी नहीं है G7 का मेंबर. G7 इज बेसिकली यूरोपियन इकोनॉमीज एंड US प्लस जापान. सो नॉर्थ अमेरिका, यूरोप एंड जापान का होता है G7. नॉर्थ अमेरिका में कनाडा, US एंड यूरोप में जर्मनी, UK, फ्रांस, इटली एंड यहाँ पे जापान. सो एक तरीके से आप देखो जर्मनी, UK, फ्रांस, इटली, तो यूरोप तो पूरा है, और फिर जापान. नाउ वी टॉक अबाउट G8 में बस एक रशिया को और ऐड कर दो इन G7 में तो हो जाएगा. और G20 में क्या करो कि आप टोटल कितने मेंबर्स है G20 में? मेरे 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12 13 14 15 16 17 18 19 20. G20 में 20 मेंबर्स हैं, ठीक है. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12 13 14 15 16 17 18 19 20. बेसिकली ऑब्वियसली G20 में 20 मेंबर्स हैं, लेकिन 21st मेंबर अफ्रीकन यूनियन आया था, है ना. सो अब देखो, इंसेप्शन इट वाज फाउंड इन 1999 आफ्टर द एशियन फाइनेंशियल क्राइसिस, है ना. कंपोजिशन 19 प्लस यूरोपियन कंट्रीज हैं इसमें, प्लस अफ्रीकन यूनियन है. 19 प्लस यूरोपियन. अच्छा, इसमें ये जो ये सारी कंट्रीज हैं, ये 20 कंट्री है, प्लस इसमें एक यूरोपियन यूनियन और जोड़ोगे तो 21 हो जाएगा, तभी मेरे को 21 याद आ रहा था। ठीक है, अफ्रीकन यूनियन रिप्रेजेंट्स 80% ऑफ ग्लोबल जीडीपी, मतलब 80% जीडीपी यही कवर कर रहा है। 75% ग्लोबल एक्सपोर्ट, सारा एक्सपोर्ट नियरली कवर कर रहा है, 3/4, एंड 60% ऑफ ग्लोबल पॉपुलेशन, 60% ग्लोबल पॉपुलेशन कवर कर रहा है। चाइना, इंडिया सब है इसके अंदर, लेकिन 40% फिर भी कवर नहीं हो रहा है पॉपुलेशन। मोस्ट प्रोबेबली वो मेरे को लगता है सेंट्रल एशिया, वेस्ट एशिया वाली पॉपुलेशन कवर नहीं हो रही ना इसके अंदर पूरी। आप देखो वेस्ट एशिया से यहाँ पे कौन कौन सी कंट्री है। वेस्ट एशिया से यहाँ पे है ये सऊदी अरेबिया और तुर्की, यही दो हैं, और बाकी जितनी भी पाटूक वाली कंट्री हैं वो नहीं है। पाकिस्तान भी नहीं है इसके अंदर, ठीक है, G20 में पाकिस्तान भी नहीं है। ओके, अब एक बार ये देख लो कि ऑर्गेनाइजेशनल स्ट्रक्चर क्या है। G20 ऑपरेट्स विद अ परमानेंट सेक्रेटेरिएट, वर्क इज कंडक्टेड थ्रू 2 पैरेलल स्ट्रीम्स, फाइनेंस ट्रैक लेड बाय फाइनेंस मिनिस्टर एंड सेंट्रल बैंक गवर्नर्स, एंड द शेरपा ट्रैक। अभी आपको याद होगा 2023 में जब 9 और 10 सितंबर 2023 को G20 समिट हुआ था, जब सारे वर्ल्ड लीडर्स इंडिया में आए थे। आई वॉज प्रिपेयरिंग फॉर दिस एग्जाम एट द टाइम ऑल्सो, बट क्या वो पूरा सजा दिया गया था दिल्ली को, एकदम ऐसे सजाया गया था, मतलब लोग हैरान हो रहे थे कि दिल्ली ही है, फॉरेन बन गया। शेरपा ट्रैक, इट इज़ हेडेड बाय शेरपा हु इज़ रिप्रेजेंटेटिव ऑफ द लीडर, ठीक है, एंड फाइनेंस ट्रैक लेड बाय फाइनेंस मिनिस्टर एंड सेंट्रल बैंक गवर्नर्स। आगे बढ़ जाते हैं। इंडिया का प्रपोजल देख लो, क्या क्या प्रपोज किया और क्या क्या इंक्लूड कर लिया गया 2025 के जॉन्सबर्ग समिट में। प्रॉब्लम यहाँ पे ये थी कि ट्रम्प नहीं आया था। सो इंडिया का G20 ग्लोबल ट्रेडिशन नॉलेज रिपोजिटरी, G20 अफ्रीका स्किल मल्टीप्लायर, G20 ग्लोबल हेल्थ केयर रिस्पॉन्स टीम, ओपन सैटेलाइट डेटा पार्टनरशिप, क्रिटिकल मिनरल्स सर्कुलैरिटी इनिशिएटिव, एंड G20 इनिशिएटिव ऑन काउंटरिंग द ड्रग टेरर नेक्सस। गोल्डन ट्रायंगल और गोल्डन क्रीसेंट जो इंडिया के बगल में बने हुए हैं, ये ड्रग कार्टल्स के बहुत बड़े सोर्सेज हैं। सो फॉर दिस रीज़न इंडिया ने ये डाला होगा। ठीक है, आगे बढ़ जाते हैं अब अपने इंडिया US डिफेंस टाइज पे। और अभी वापस से कुछ इंटरम एग्रीमेंट हुआ है, अगर आप रिसेंटली अभी आपने देखा है, उसी को फाइनलाइज करना है, तो उसी से रिलेटेड बात हो रही है, पल्सेस से रिलेटेड बात है। और गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया ने सीधा बोला है कि अगर कंसेशंस नहीं दिए जाते हैं इसको इम्पॉर्टेंट इंडस्ट्रियल सेक्टर्स में, तो इंडिया का इंटरिम ट्रेड एग्रीमेंट तब तक साइन नहीं होगा जब तक इंडिया को अश्योरेंस नहीं मिल जाता स्ट्रेटेजिक सेक्टर्स में या फिर इम्पॉर्टेंट डोमेस्टिकली वल्नरेबल सेक्शंस में US के द्वारा कि उनको एग्जम्पशंस मिलेंगे। अगर एग्जम्पशंस नहीं मिलते तो इंडिया नहीं करेगा साइन, क्योंकि इंडिया इज़ ऑब्वियसली अ कंट्री विच has a population of 1.4 billion and it will obviously look for its self-interest. Why not? Strategic autonomy, as we say. Now move forward.
India-US defense ties. Why in the news? Recently, India and the US have signed a 10-year framework pact for defense partnership. More on the news. This agreement is a follow-up to similar 10-year framework agreements signed in 2005 and 2015. The US has also approved recently the sale of Javelin anti-tank missile systems, Excalibur guided artillery munitions, and related equipment to India.
Defense ties की बात हो रही है।
India-US defense ties.
Right.
India-US defense cooperation began during the 1962 Sino-Indian War, when the US supplied India with transport aircraft, weapons, and training. Dialogue mechanism. OAPEX. Dialogue 2+2 ministerial dialogue co-chaired by the Minister of External Affairs and Minister of Defense and the U.S. Secretary of State and Secretary of Defense. Others. Defense Policy Group, DPG. Military Cooperation Group, MCG. Defense Joint Working Group, DJWG, etc. Foundational agreements is the General Security of Military Information Agreement, GSOMIA, signed in 2002. Allows the sharing of classified information by the US government and firms with the Indian government and state-owned enterprises. Logistics Exchange, Memorandum of Agreement,
LEMOA.
LEMOA, signed in 2016. It gives the two countries' militaries access to each other's facilities for refueling and replenishing. O Communications, Compatibility and Security Agreement,
2
COMCASA,
plus 2 मिनिस्ट्रियल
signed in
डिफेंस होता है
2018.
तो मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ
It
एक्सटर्नल
allows the
अफेयर्स
sale
में
and
एस
exchange
जयशंकर
of
जी
encrypted
बैठेंगे वहाँ पे
communications
यूएस
data
सेक्रेटरी
and
से मार्को
equipment.
रूबियो यहाँ पे
O
डिफेंस
Basic
मिनिस्टर
Exchange
राजनाथ
and
सिंह और वहाँ पे
Communications
सेक्रेटरी ऑफ
Agreement,
डिफेंस
BECA,
पेट
signed in
हेक्सेट
2020. It enables the two countries to share advanced geospatial satellite data for long-range navigation and missile targeting. Defense trade. O status. In 2016, US designated India as a major defense partner. O trade facilitation. India's Strategic Trade Authorization, STA, 1 status, 2018, enables faster, license-free access to a wide range of US military and dual-use technologies. O major defense acquisitions. India operates US origin platforms like P-81, C-17,
P8I,
Apache,
C-17,
MH-60R,
Apache,
M777,
MH-60R,
howitzers, etc.
M77 Hordes.
Joint military exercises and
Howitzers,
interoperability
etc.
or
Right.
bilateral exercises. For example, Yud Abhyas, Army, Vajra Praha, Special Forces, Cope India, Air Force, Tiger, Triumph, Tri-Service, etc. Or multilateral exercises.
Quad.
For example, Malabar, Quad Navies, RIMPAC, Red Flag, etc. Significance of India, US defense ties.
Major defense.
Strategic balancing in the Indo-Pacific. Cooperation enhances India's ability to balance China's assertiveness through deeper maritime cooperation, information sharing, and combined exercises. For example, Malabar exercise with US, Japan, and Australia. Technology and industrial partnership. Gives India access to advanced military technology and strengthens its defense industrial base through co-production and tech transfer. For example, P-81 aircraft, GEF 414 aircraft engine manufacturing. O support for Make in India and export ambitions. The US has emerged among India's top 3 defense export customers, along with France and Armenia. Logistics and global reach. LMOA agreements expand India's operational footprint by ensuring mutual access to facilities and support networks. Economic and capability. Gains. Defense trade exceeding $20 billion boosts jobs, supply chains, and technology ecosystems in both nations. Diversification beyond Russia. US defense ties help India reduce historical overdependence on Russian platforms and broaden technological options. Key irritants in India-US defense ties. Strategic autonomy. Challenges. India works with both the US and Russia. US pressure to restrict Russian oil and arms purchase creates friction. O example, CAATSA concerns during S-400 deal with Russia. Limited technology access. The US export control rules block many advanced technologies even after STA-1 status. O example, sensitive jet engine components remain subject to US licensing and regulatory clearances. Different regional priorities. The US continues security engagement with Pakistan, which creates discomfort for India. O example, high-level US-Pakistan military meetings in 2025 after Operation Sindoor. Russian legacy systems. India's large Russian inventory makes interoperability with US platforms difficult. O example, S-400 and Su-30, Mk-1 alongside US platforms like Apache. Unpredictable US politics. US domestic politics and Congress can delay or block key defense deals. O example, MQ-9. B-drone deal stalled earlier due to congressional holds. Shifting great power equations. Any US-Russia thaw or stronger Russia-China partnership can affect India's defense choices. O example, Russia exploring new defense links with Pakistan. Conclusion. The renewed 10-year defense framework provides an opportunity to shift India-US ties from a buyer-seller dynamic to a genuine strategic and industrial partnership. By deepening co-development, easing technology transfer barriers, and aligning cooperation with India's strategic autonomy, the relationship can contribute to a stable balance of power in the Indo-Pacific while strengthening India's long-term defense self-reliance and global security role. 2.5. India-Bhutan relations. Why in the news? Prime Minister paid a 2-day state visit to Bhutan at the invitation of His Majesty, the King of Bhutan. More on the news. The visit coincided with the Global Peace Prayer Festival in Thimphu, which featured the exposition of the Piprawa relics of Lord Buddha from India. Major highlights of the visit.
Piprawa
Major
relics of
highlights
Lord
of the
Buddha.
visit. O. Inauguration Hydroelectric Project India to support Gyalzong National Service Program, mandatory national service for youth in Bhutan, with 200 crore grant
Punat
and
Sangchu 2
1,500 crore
hydroelectric
concessionary loan. The
ठीक है।
Punat Sangchu 2 OMOU for establishment of railway links encompassing the Kokrajhar-Gyalefu and Banarat-Samsi rail links. India to allot land in Varanasi for construction of a Bhutanese temple/monastery. O. Historical development of relationship and Treaty of Friendship and Cooperation, 1949, established diplomatic relations. O. Security Clause, Article 2.
पुनाट सांगचू आ जाता है कहाँ पे है?
Bhutan was to be
में है।
guided by India in external affairs. India provided arms, technology, and military training to Bhutanese security personnel. 1949 Treaty Revision, 2007. O removed the clause requiring Bhutan to seek India's guidance in external affairs, ensuring greater equality. O revised Article 2 requires both nations to cooperate closely and prevent use of their territory for activities harmful to each other's security.
Military training to Bhutanese
Significance of
security
India-Bhutan bilateral relation. For India, O strategic buffer and security. Bhutan's geographical location acts as a buffer between India and China. Bhutan's western border, Doklam, is vital to ensure the security of India's Siliguri corridor. O energy security. Bhutan is a dependable hydropower partner, with India involved in 5 major HEPs totaling 2,986 megawatts, including Chuka, Kurichu, Tala, Mangdekhu, and Punat Sangchu 2. O economic access. Bhutan remains India's top trading partner and a major investment destination. O. Internationalization of BHM UPI and RuPay card. Bhutan is the first country to adopt UPI standards for its QR deployment. The RuPay card is fully interoperable. For Bhutan. O. Economic development. India is Bhutan's principal development partner, assisting its socio-economic development since its first 5-year plan in 1961. For the 12th FYP, India's contribution constituted 73% of Bhutan's total external grant component. O. Revenue generation. Electricity exports to India generate about 40% of Bhutan's revenue and 25% of its gross domestic product, GDP. O. Tackling landlocked nature. The 2016 Trade, Commerce and Transit Agreement establish a free trade regime and provide Bhutan duty-free transit of goods to slash from third countries. O. Financial stability. India provides crucial RBY financing facilities, including the 1,500 crore Indian rupees currency swap facility and multiple standby credit facilities. O. Education and capacity building. India provides several opportunities, including over 1,500 scholarships for students. For example, Ambassador's Scholarship, Nehru Wangchuk Scholarship, and approximately 325 annual ITEC training slots for professionals. O. Space collaboration. India and Bhutan jointly developed the India-Bhutan SAT 2022. O. Defense cooperation. The Indian Military Training Team, IMTRAT, trains Bhutanese security personnel. Challenges in India-Bhutan relations. Geopolitical pressure from China. China is making concerted efforts to establish formal diplomatic and economic ties and pressures Bhutan to finalize border demarcation.
ये भी नाटक है।
China's road and railway extensions in Tibet, for example, Lhasa-Shigatse line extension to Yatung, are beginning to erode India's geographic advantage. The Doklam Dilemma, China's long-standing package deal, offered to settle the border dispute by ceding control of the strategically critical Doklam Plateau, remains a security concern for India. Economic perceptions. Some Bhutanese perceive India's dominance as exploitative. Critics point out that India's aid often creates jobless growth, and much of the aid flows back to Indian companies. Hydropower financing terms. There is growing domestic criticism regarding India's shifting finance model for hydropower projects. Oh, historically, the grant loan component was 60 to 40, but this has recently reversed, with loans often at high interest rates comprising 60 to 70% of financial support, raising questions about India's motives. Conclusion. The India-Bhutan relationship is a unique partnership founded on shared spiritual heritage and deep mutual trust, historically cemented by the 1949 treaty and its revised 2007 version. Recent visits demonstrate India's commitment to remaining a steadfast and substantive partner through massive financial commitments and crucial connectivity projects. 2.6. UN 80 Initiative Action Plan. Why in the news? The United Nations, UN, recently presented the UN 80 Initiative Action Plan, a coordinated roadmap to carry out system-wide reforms. About UN 80 Initiative. It is an ambitious, system-wide reform effort launched in March 2025 to celebrate the 80th anniversary of UN. Objective: make the UN more agile, integrated, efficient, and impactful, especially amid shrinking resources. It has three main work streams. OO, reviewing the implementation of mandates received from member states. O, examining possible structural changes and program realignments in UN. Identifying efficiencies and improvements in the way the UN works. System. Timeline assigned: November 2025 to December 2026. Key reform areas. Work packages.
ये important है
O,
UN
peace and
80
security. New models for peace operations
Action plan
that
आया
delegate
है।
tasks more efficiently.
UN को रिफॉर्म करने के लिए
O,
आया है।
humanitarian
UN को
response.
इतना
A
agile,
new
efficient,
humanitarian
impactful
compact for
बनाना है।
simpler emergency plans and integrated supply.
Efficiencies and improvement, reviewing
Chains.
implementation mandate, examining
O,
possible
development
structural
system.
changes and program realignments.
Reconfiguration of UN country teams and regional structures for cost
ये
effectiveness.
है 1 साल का टाइमलाइन।
O, institutional mergers. Assessing possible mergers of entities with overlapping work for greater coherence and savings. For example, UNDP, United Nations Development Programme, and UNOPS, United Nations Office for Project Services. O, operational enablers, common data, shared technology platforms, unified supply chains, and simplified training systems. Need for UN reforms. Structural challenges. O, outdated representation. UNSC reflects post-World War II geopolitics, not 21st century realities, with no permanent
Right.
seats for countries such as India, one of the largest contributors to UN
Post World War
peacekeeping.
II है ना।
O, loss of credibility and global trust. Prolonged conflict, deadlocks, selective enforcement of human rights, and perceived unequal treatment of nations have eroded trust in UN's authority. For example, UNSC deadlock due to veto power in case of Russia-Ukraine war, Israel-Palestine conflict, etc. Governance challenge. O, new global challenges. UN lack of specialized bodies and adequate resources to respond effectively to new issues like cybersecurity, AI ethics, etc. O, mandate overload. 40,000 plus mandates overwhelm the system, creating duplication and inefficient resource use. Institutional challenges or resource constraints. System resources are estimated to fall 25% from $66 to $50 billion in 2026 compared to 2024. About 80% of UN system funds come from voluntary contributions. O, outdated systems. Poor digital tracking and manual processes slow down mandate management. O, institutional fragmentation. Multiple entities operate in the same thematic spaces, increasing transaction costs for countries and partners greater than, for example, UN Women and UNFPA, the United Nations Population Fund, do overlapping work. O, ambition resource mismatch. Member states assign more tasks than the UN has capacity or funds to execute. Conclusion. Reforms envisioned under UN 80 will strengthen the UN's ability to respond to emerging global crises by modernizing multilateral governance, improving efficiency, and reducing costs. They also reinforce the UN development system, enabling more effective delivery of the Sustainable Development Goals.
अब आओ एक चीज़ आपको बताता हूँ, यूएन के बारे में बताते हैं। यूएन भी बड़ा इंपॉर्टेंट है, रिवाइज कर लेते हैं। सो यूएन इज़ 1945 चार्टर ऑफ यूनाइटेड नेशंस वाज साइन इन सैन फ्रांसिस्को, न्यूयॉर्क में इसका हेडक्वार्टर्स है, जो राइट में लिखा है। 193 कंट्रीज टोटल इसके अंदर हैं मेंबर। इंडिया इज़ अ फाउंडिंग मेंबर ऑफ दिस, ठीक है। आफ्टर दैट स्टेट्स आर एडमिटेड टू मेंबरशिप बाय डिसीजन बाय जनरल असेंबली अपॉन द रिकमेंडेशन ऑफ सिक्योरिटी काउंसिल। मतलब कोई नया मेंबर ऐड करना है तो अप्रॉक्सीमेटली 196 नेशंस हैं, थोड़े और नेशंस हैं, तो थोड़े बहुत नेशंस अभी भी बाहर हैं, कम है वैसे, मोस्टली कवर्ड है। बड़े देश तो सारे कवर्ड हैं। जो डिसीजन है, आइलैंड नेशन हो सकता है बाहर हो कुछ छोटे मोटे। स्टेट्स आर एडमिटेड टू मेंबरशिप बाय डिसीजन ऑफ जनरल असेंबली अपॉन रिकमेंडेशन ऑफ सिक्योरिटी काउंसिल। चार्टर प्रिंसिपल्स, इंटरनेशनल पीस एंड सिक्योरिटी, सोवरेन इक्वालिटी, कोऑपरेशन एंड ह्यूमन राइट्स, ये चार्टर प्रिंसिपल है। अब इसके 6 मेन ऑर्गन है। पहला ऑर्गन है जनरल असेंबली UNGA, दूसरा है UNSC सिक्योरिटी काउंसिल। जनरल असेंबली जहाँ पे सारे मेंबर, ऑल मेंबर स्टेट्स आर इट्स मेंबर्स हैज इक्वल वोट। ये बड़ी इंपॉर्टेंट बात है। यहाँ पे जो वोटिंग होती है इक्वल वोट होता है, इलेक्ट्स नॉन परमानेंट UNSC मेंबर्स। अच्छा, अब जो ये इंपॉर्टेंट है, ये जो नॉन परमानेंट UNSC मेंबर्स हैं 2/3 वोट से सेलेक्ट होते हैं। ऐसा नहीं होता कि आधा 50% +1 से कर दिया सिंपल मेजॉरिटी से, वो नहीं है। 2/3 टोटल मेंबर्स जब रिकमेंड करेंगे उसी के बाद जाकर के UNSC के मेंबर सेलेक्ट होंगे। टोटल 15 मेंबर UNSC में बैठते हैं, 10 नॉन परमानेंट होते हैं, 5 परमानेंट आपको बता ही रखा है। US होता है, चाइना है, रशिया है, फ्रांस है और UK है। ये P5 तो हमेशा बैठेंगे, हर 2 साल में ये रोटेट होंगे। ये जो 10 मेंबर्स आएंगे ना UNGA से सेलेक्ट होकर के, जो कि 2/3 मेजॉरिटी UNGA में चाहिए, तब जाके सेलेक्ट होता है। देन यू हैव UNSC P5 plus 10 elected maintains peace and security. Then next is the Economic and Social Council, ECOSOC. Here 54 members coordinates economic, social, environmental work. Then next is International Court of Justice, ICJ. ICJ is a judicial organ, settle disputes between the states, Peace Palace in Hague. Next is Trusteeship Council. So it was enacted in 1994. Next is Secretariat, headed by UN Secretary General, administrative and coordinated functions. ठीक है, सो देखो वापस बता देता हूँ। GA हो गया, SC हो गया, ECOSOC हो गया। अभी 3 थोड़े लास्ट के हार्ड होते हैं। इंटरनेशनल कोर्ट ऑफ जस्टिस हेग में, UN ट्रस्टीशिप काउंसिल और सेक्रेटरी, इन सारी चीज़ों को देखने के लिए, और हेडेड बाय UN सेक्रेटरी जनरल, एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव कोऑर्डिनेटिव फंक्शंस। और ट्रस्टीशिप काउंसिल इनएक्टिव है 1994 से, चल ही नहीं रहा, तभी ये न्यूज़ में नहीं रहता ट्रस्टीशिप काउंसिल ना। स्पेशलाइज्ड बहुत सारे UN के अपने एजेंसीज हैं, ऑटोनॉमस, लिंक्ड वाया एग्रीमेंट्स विद UN। 15 ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है। FAO का हेडक्वार्टर रोम में, ICAO का सिविल जो भी है, IFAD का रोम में, ICAO का मॉन्ट्रियल में, ILO का जनेवा में, IMF का वाशिंगटन DC में, IMO का मैरीटाइम ऑर्गेनाइजेशन का लंदन में, देन ITU जनेवा, यूनेस्को पेरिस, यूनिडो वियना, UN टूरिज्म मैड्रिड, UPU बर्न, WHO जनरल, वीपो जनेवा में बहुत सारे हैं ना यार, और WMO भी जनेवा, वर्ल्ड बैंक वाशिंगटन DC। तो वाशिंगटन DC मेरे को 2 दिखा, एक तो वर्ल्ड बैंक और IMF दिखा, जो कि इंपॉर्टेंट है पैसे से रिलेटेड, सारा US में, क्योंकि US सबसे बड़ी इकोनॉमी है। देन यू हैव FAO, जनेवा बता देता हूँ। जनेवा ILO का है, ITU का है, ट्रेड यूनियन ITU होगा, और वीपो का है, WMO मैरीटाइम ऑर्गेनाइजेशन का है, और जनेवा, बेसिकली जनेवा मेरे को 5 में दिख रहा है, ILO में दिख गया, ITU में दिख गया 1 2, WHO में दिख गया 3, वीपो जनेवा में है, WMO जनेवा में है। ये हो गया, ठीक है। आगे बढ़ जाते हैं, न्यूज़ इन शॉर्ट ईस्ट एशिया समिट से करते हैं। So yes, East Asia Summit we were going to do.
2.7 News in Shorts. 2.7.1 East Asia Summit, EAS. 21st East Asia Summit adopted Kuala Lumpur Declaration on Peace and Stability. The declaration aims to implement joint projects and activities under the EAS Plan of Action 2024 to 2028, aligned with ASEAN 2045, our shared future vision. About East Asia Summit. Overview. A leaders-led forum for dialogue and cooperation on strategic, political, and economic issues to promote peace, stability, and prosperity in East Asia. Genesis, established in 2005 with the first summit held in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Nature, an annual meeting of heads of state or government of participating countries. Members, ASEAN. Member states, Australia, China, India, Japan, New Zealand, the Republic of Korea, United States and Russia. 2.7.2, Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation, APEC. 2025 Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation, APEC, Summit was recently held in the South Korean city of Gyeongju. About APEC, Secretariat Singapore. Founded in 1989, members 21 economies, Australia, Canada, Chile, China, Indonesia, Japan, South Korea, Malaysia, Mexico, the United States, etc. Oh, India. Not a member, observer status. Objective: to build a dynamic and harmonious Asia-Pacific community by championing free and open trade and investment, promoting economic integration, cooperation, etc. 2.7.3 Australia, Canada, India Technology and Innovation, ACIT was India, Australia and Canada announced a new trilateral framework,
ये important है,
ACITI,
ACIT.
on the sidelines of the G20 summit in Johannesburg.
G20
About
summit के साइडलाइन में
Canada,
ऑस्ट्रेलिया,
India
इंडिया, कनाडा
Technology
ने
and Innovation,
एक ट्राइलेटरल फ्रेमवर्क कर लिया. पर्पस
partnership.
इसका है क्रिटिकल एंड
Purpose:
इमर्जिंग
enhance
टेक्नोलॉजीज एंड
cooperation in
इनोवेशन
critical and
डोमेन्स.
emerging technologies and innovation
ये
domains.
बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है.
Key focus areas, including clean energy, diversified and resilient supply chains, particularly in critical minerals. O. Explore ways to accelerate AI development and mass adoption to improve the lives of their citizens. 2.7.4 World Artificial Intelligence Cooperation Organization, WICO. Recently at APEC, Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation,
APEC में.
meet in South Korea, China pushed for a global
India
body,
member नहीं है.
WICO, to
Observer
govern
status है
artificial
APEC में.
intelligence, AI norms.
कोशिश कर रहा है लेकिन मेंबरशिप
About
मिल नहीं
WICO.
रही है इंडिया को अभी.
Aim: shaping global standards for world cooperation.
साउथ कोरिया में हुआ
It
है.
incorporates principles from China's 2023 Global AI Governance Initiative, emphasizing human-centric design, data sovereignty, and algorithmic transparency. Announced during 2025 World Artificial Intelligence Conference in Shanghai. Key purpose: reimagining the international architecture of AI governance, position China as an alternative to USA, exert China's soft power, etc. 2.7.5 Abraham Accords. Recently, USA President confirmed that Kazakhstan would be a part of Abraham Accords. About Abraham Accords. Purpose:
Kazakhstan.
diffuse tensions in the Middle East by normalizing relations between Israel and several so-called moderate Arab states to ensure formal diplomatic, trade and security ties between these states with Israel. O named after the biblical Abraham, considered by both Jews and Arabs as their common ancestor and a symbol of
Biblical
brotherhood.
Abraham, considered both Jews and Arabs
Genesis,
as common
initially
ancestor.
signed in 2020
Okay.
between Israel with the UAE, Bahrain and Morocco.
इन तीनों के साथ साइन किया था
2.7.6
इजराइल ने यूएई,
Water
बहरीन और
Convention.
मोरक्को के साथ.
Bangladesh became the first country in South Asia to join the UN's Convention on the Protection and Use of Transboundary Watercourses and International Lakes, Water Convention,
बांग्लादेश चाचा
About
ज्वाइन
water
कर लिया है
convention.
वाटर कन्वेंशन को.
adopted in Helsinki in 1992 and entered into force in 1996. Legally binding
इसीलिए नहीं
convention
है,
for
legally
sustainable
binding है.
management of shared water resources requires parties to prevent, control and reduce transboundary impacts. O ensures reasonable,
Prevent, control,
equitable
and reduce.
and sustainable use of shared waters. O mandates cooperation through agreements and joint bodies among riparian states. 2.7.7
Anegada
Passage.
Very important.
Fighter jets and guided missile destroyers transited the Anegada Passage as a part of USA's Operation Southern Spear against narco-terrorism in the Caribbean. About Anegada Passage. Location:
West Indies.
Channel in the West Indies, connecting the Atlantic Ocean with the Caribbean Sea.
Important है.
It separates the British Virgin Islands, west, from the Leeward Islands, southeast. It is one of the two passages through which subsurface water enters the Caribbean, other being the Windward Passage. 3. Economy.
Okay.
3.1
So यहाँ
Export
पे
Promotion Mission.
एक मिनट
Why
के
in
लिए
the
मैं
new-
इसको रोक रहा हूँ और एक चीज़ अपन और बात कर लेते हैं यार. एपेक है ना, एपेक APEC, इसके बारे में गूगल से पूछते हैं. हे गूगल, हे गूगल. ओके, बताएगा नहीं, मेरा कनेक्टेड नहीं है. ठीक है, कोई बात नहीं। एशिया पैसिफिक इकोनॉमिक कोऑपरेशन है क्या, कि ये समिट रिसेंटली साउथ कोरिया सिटी में हुई है। 1989 में 21 इकोनॉमीज, ऑस्ट्रेलिया है, कनाडा है, चिले है, चाइना, इंडोनेशिया, जापान, साउथ कोरिया, मलेशिया, मेक्सिको एंड यूएस, मोस्टली डेवलप्ड और एशियान नेशंस इसके अंदर हैं। इंडिया इसमें नहीं है। ऑब्जेक्टिव है टू बिल्ड डायनेमिक एंड हार्मोनियस एशिया पैसिफिक कम्युनिटी, तो इस कम्युनिटी में इंडिया को नहीं लिया जा रहा है। बाय चैंपियनिंग फ्री एंड ओपन ट्रेड एंड इन्वेस्टमेंट, फ्री एंड ओपन ट्रेड क्वाड में इंडिया करता ही है, लेकिन यहाँ पे पता नहीं क्यों नहीं लिया जा रहा है। आप सर्च करना अपने लेवल पे, है ना, कि एपिक में इंडिया को क्यों नहीं इंक्लूड किया जा रहा है, बस फाउंड एक ये ऑब्जर्वर का स्टेटस क्यों दे रखा है। ठीक है, और ये जो आया है ऑस्ट्रेलिया, कनाडा, इंडिया टेक्नोलॉजी इनोवेशन, सो बेसिकली ये आया है साइडलाइंस ऑफ G20 समिट इन जॉन्सबर्ग, राइट। एनहांस कोऑपरेशन क्रिटिकल इमर्जिंग टेक्नोलॉजीज एंड इनोवेशन डोमेन्स, ठीक है। चलो, और अनेगाडा पैसेज वेस्ट इंडीज़ और आपका कैरेबियन में है, ये चैनल है वेस्ट इंडीज़ में, कनेक्ट करता है अटलांटिक ओशन को कैरेबियन सी से। सो बेसिकली जो वेस्ट है गल्फ ऑफ मेक्सिको के आसपास, उसके आसपास का जो अटलांटिक ओशन है उसको कनेक्ट करता है कैरेबियन सी से, जो कैरेबियन मिडिल अपना जो मिडिल अमेरिकाज है उस वाले एरिया को कनेक्ट करता है अटलांटिक नॉर्थ से, मतलब वेस्टर्न नॉर्थ वेस्टर्न एरिया को कनेक्ट करता है साउथ ईस्टर्न एरिया से। उसके बीच में ऐसा ट्रांजिट पास सा होगा, ये पैसेज होगा। फाइटर जेट एंड गाइडेड मिसाइल डिस्ट्रॉयर्स ट्रांजिटेड दिस एज अ पार्ट ऑफ यूएसएस सदर्न ऑपरेशन सदर्न स्पीयर अगेंस्ट नार्को टेररिज्म इन कैरेबियन। और आपको पता ही है वेनेजुएला के उसको कैप्चर कर लिया था, ठीक है। चलो, वील मीट, 2 घंटे का हो गया ना, कोई बात नहीं, मैं इसको कर सकता था लेकिन अब सारा बाद में करेंगे, मेरे को एक काम भी करना है इम्पोर्टेंट फिलहाल टॉक। और आज डेट आप देख लो 6 अप्रैल है, तो 6 अप्रैल को मैं आज अपलोड कर दूंगा ऐसे। अभी सुबह के 10 बज के, टाइम बता देता हूँ तुमको, 10:12 हो रहे हैं, तो आपको शाम रात तक मिल जाएगा ये पक्का, गारंटी है। थैंक यू फॉर हैविंग अ डिस्कशन, होप यू आर डूइंग गुड।